Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Luke Beasley Show. We are here. We are happy. We are living through the news and doing our best to smile through it. I hope you guys are all doing very well. I started quite abruptly today, so I didn't have any lead in. So apologies for anyone who is missing the beginning of the show because I didn't give a countdown or anything like that. It just kind of went live. But for any of y'all who have missed kind of the announcement about the change in the show style, I am now going live each day, Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central where I am, to do about an hour. It could be anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour and a half. But part one of the show, what I call the main show, is 4 to 5 stories each day of news, and we go through and talk about everything you'll need to be aware of. And then the post show, and that's usually pretty long, an hour or two after the main show, we just react to stuff, watch clips and watch debates and all that type of stuff. Just kind of relax. So y'all let me know if everything looks good and sounds good before we hop into the show. Let me see you in the comments. Between each story, I check in on the comments. Pretty long, an hour. Just checking the feed, making sure it looks good. Yeah, looks pretty good. Okay. So yeah, good to have you here, William. In between, it's hot. In between stories, I will check in on the comments section. So definitely be throwing stuff in there. You can send super chats if you want to make sure I read it, / if you want to support the show, and lots of good stuff to get into. All right, well, we'll go ahead and just hop into the first story. Hey, Rich, I should say, and Riviera. But yeah, with that said, let's just go ahead and hop into the show. We got lots of stuff to go over today. The brutal and unjustified invasion of Ukraine by Russia continues every single day, with pain and suffering unnecessarily being brought onto people en masse. And one of the big takeaways from what we've been witnessing is from the perspective of Russia. Now, to be clear, no matter what, this war could not turn out good. There's nothing good about it. But from the perspective of Russia, it's actually going very poorly. And so from all of our perspectives, it's going well within the context of a war because Ukraine is standing a lot stronger and Russia is not making the gains and accomplishing the goals that they had likely set out beforehand. And that's good news, even though we have to recognize there is carnage and pain every single day. So I want to be super clear. What we're about to go over is an analysis of this as a war and this as a clash between two forces, and one that is within the context of expectations that Russia within weeks would be able to accomplish the goals they had set out, would be able to take over much of Ukraine, and we just have not seen that happen. That doesn't mean, however, they have not caused massive carnage. So before we talk about why and how this war is not going well for Russia, which, as I mentioned, is good news, and we're going to look into the specifics of that, I first just want to identify and recognize the most important part of all of this, which is the lives being lost unnecessarily. So you can see in this chart, and you have to be so clear on this. This is a massive underestimate. Every single group that has come out to try to give us estimates on the death toll from the Russian invasion of Ukraine has said, listen, this is what we can confirm, but there's likely thousands upon thousands of more deaths that we just haven't been able to confirm, and we'll be learning about that as this goes on, and hopefully someday in retrospect, once this is all over, we'll probably get all of the truth. But as of now, reported deaths based on location you can see in this chart total 10,000 470. 10,000 people in Ukraine died. Thousands upon thousands of civilians, obviously Ukrainian soldiers, and you can see here it's primarily happening in the east portion of Ukraine. And if you are watching right now, obviously podcast listeners can't see this, but it shows the larger red dots are where the most carnage has happened, and those are in particular cities where there's been a lot of clashing, a lot of fighting. So as we analyze a situation like war, we can't become oblivious or numb to the carnage that is being caused. But with that being said, let's look into this fact that I previously outlined and identified, which is Russia's actually failing in many ways from their perspective, and they're not making the accomplishments. I hate to use that word because it sounds positive and all of this is very negative, but they're not making the gains that they had hoped and that many people expected they would. Reading from NBC News, Russian President Vladimir Putin has overwhelmingly more firepower, manpower, and naval supremacy and favorable geography than Ukraine. So the world has been shocked that he has failed to demonstrate military dominance in the first few days of his invasion of Ukraine. The Russian military has not only performed more poorly than expected, but it has made blunders that have been ably exploited by Ukraine's defenders and the steadfast leadership exhibited by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. So what it's making the point right there is that the reason people are so shocked by Ukraine's force and their strength and courage in this moment is because by every objective measurement, Russia has a massively more dominant military. And so when you hypothetically sketched out a situation before this current moment that we're in, where Russia invades Ukraine, most people would say, based on the supremacy of either military, just in pure strength, resources, capabilities, Russia would be able to dominate easily. But because of some reasons we're going to get into here in just a second, that is not happening. They're not effectively using the force of their military to do what they probably had hoped to do with this invasion. I just want to quickly check on the comments. Everyone sounds good? Yep, everything's going good. Good. There's just been times where I did like a big portion of a show and I was muted. So next, I want to look at a article that was written up about 5 reasons why Russian forces are struggling in Ukraine, so that we can kind of start getting a sense of why is it that with this dominant military, they're not doing as well as they had hoped. So the first reason this article lays out, and apologies, this is from Defense One, Putin told basically no one, not even his generals, his true intentions. Hints that Russian leader Vladimir Putin kept his true plan for Ukraine mostly to himself have been trickling out on social media for days. So one of the things that they identify in this portion of the analysis is that Putin wasn't actually prepping with people close to him, with his generals, with military leaders, and with the public to the level that you would need to quote unquote successfully pull off a potential overtake of another country, because he pretended, is what they suspect, that there was some other intention and some other plan with what they were doing, but then it turned out to be an all-out war he wanted to wage. And so because he didn't effectively communicate to the people around him that that was his plan, there was no way for them to properly prep all of the aspects of the military, of the Russian population sentiment, all those things that you would need to do the level of, I don't want to, not damage, but conquering. You do the level of conquering that they were intending. The next point they lay out is this is not the fight they planned for. Leading up to the invasion, analysts had painted a portrait of a modernized, well-trained Russian military, but that has not been on display in the war's first days. Again, if the generals weren't on board, if the generals weren't properly prepped, how are they going to prepare the Russian military? Plus, we've seen some level of confusion, lack of motivation among the military members, even just all the way to the ground level where they don't really know why they're fighting this. So how could they possibly be as effective as they can be? Third reason they lay out is they got overconfident. Quote, if you look at how they launched their attacks, they clearly expected that to happen, expected that to happen through a quick and pretty bloodless campaign, Cohen said on Tuesday. Again, just like the rest of the world had kind of expected, just like many military analysts had expected, if Russia was going to do this, they thought it was going to go off pretty quickly, and Russia within weeks would be able to take over much of Ukraine. Again, that's not what we've seen happen. And so they likely were overconfident with the expectations of what was going to happen. And then fourth, they say they have held back their air power. Russia has not used the full extent of its air power in Ukraine, and the Ukrainians are still able to conduct their own air operations and launch air defense capabilities, a senior defense official told Pentagon reports Tuesday. So just military incompetence or bad military decision making. And finally, Europe's surprising response. Putin may have shored up Russian currency to withstand sanctions, but there's no way he could have predicted Europe's strong response, several analysts said. In a matter of days, German opposition to bulking up its defense spending melted away, and the country has pledged to quickly raise its military budget to 2% of GDP. Russian aircraft are banned from the European Union's entire airspace. And this is something that I think is huge as well. Number one, credit should go toward to the Ukrainian people, to Volodymyr Zelensky, to Ukrainian leadership, and Ukraine as a whole for standing up so strong with such courage to protect their home. Also, you can give a lot of the blame to Russian incompetence. And then additionally, I do think it's apt to recognize how strong the West's support of Ukraine has been, and that has undeniably made a big difference. And so, to sum it up, Putin seems to have attempted to pull this off in a manner that was unplanned, unprepared, which you can't do leading into such a war. The Russian people around him, as in leadership, and the Russian people at whole, don't have their hearts in this mission to the level that they would need to be successful. Ukraine has stood strong. The West has backed Ukraine with a lot of strength. And all of that sums up, I may have missed some points, but generally that sums up to a massive failure so far on the part of Russia. Again, every day lives are being lost. Every day Russia is causing carnage. So this isn't like a hooray moment. This is terrible, everything that's happening. But within the context of a war that's going on and us hoping that Ukraine can stand through it, there are good indicators to that effect. And I just want to keep giving all the thoughts, all of the hopeful energy to Ukraine, to the Ukrainian people, to keep standing so strong with such courage to defend their home. All right, let's check in on the comments. Hello, everybody. Couldn't agree more. Ukraine deserves the main credit for how well they have been doing, and the ongoing support is invaluable for them to keep it up. Absolutely. Yeah, it's like there's a few aspects of this that you can look at to identify what is leading to the current set of outcomes, but at least from a visceral, emotional standpoint, you want to send a lot of that energy towards the bravery and courage that Ukraine has shown, because a lot of countries that are smaller, less militarily advanced, and less resources invested in the military, a lot of countries wouldn't have been able to muster up the strength and courage to do what Ukraine has done, because it would have possibly felt like a lost cause. But then you see, whenever you do have the support of the West in a situation like this, but then you show your own strength, then you can stand up against one of the strongest militaries in the world, which is incredible, as long as that military is also, quite incompetent in this moment. Thank you, Rich, for saying that about the Pac-Man situation. Matt says Russia started out with 30,000 main battle tanks, and they've lost so many. They're something through their 1960 Soviet stock. Wow, they're going to go back to old tanks. Ukrainian guerrilla tactics have been impressive, but they could use the night more. Chi lays it out clearly in guerrilla warfare. Very cool. Very, very cool. Alrighty, let's jump into our next story. Don't forget to send super chats if you want a bunch of appreciation from me. After the leaked Supreme Court ruling over Roe v. Wade, or the draft opinion over Roe v. Wade, and then of course once it was actually overturned, not to mention the landslide of other negative rulings that have come down recently from the Supreme Court, we saw a sharp spike in the percentage of America that disapproved of the Supreme Court. So as you can see here in this graphic, this is measuring from a YouGov Yahoo News poll the percentage of Democrats, percentages of Americans at large, and then of course percentage of Republicans who say they have no confidence in the Supreme Court. So if you look at this, it could seem confusing because the percentage of Democrats is going up, but that's because it's the amount of Democrats who say I have none, zero confidence in the Supreme Court. And May 23rd, Democratic feelings to that effect was only at 30%. So only 30% of Democrats said I have no confidence in the Supreme Court. Today, it's all the way up to above 50% of Democrats who believe that. Among all Americans, it was around 25% on May 23rd who said I have no confidence in the Supreme Court. And now it's all the way up to pretty much 40% of Americans who say I have no confidence in the Supreme Court. And the reason why that phrasing is important, because this isn't saying, do you generally approve or disapprove of the Supreme Court, or are you happy with their rulings? That's not what this is asking, because we've seen it's over 50% of people who disapprove of the specific Roe v. Wade decision. This is asking people, do you have any confidence in our Supreme Court right now? And 50-something% of Democrats and 40% of Americans broadly say, nope, or I have absolutely zero confidence. And that is wild, and it shows the way that the Supreme Court is not representative. Not that it is a democratic body. It's not. Obviously, it's appointed by representatives, but the actual Supreme Court justices themselves are not serving a constituency. But it does represent this stray away from the opinions and the values of the Supreme Court justices from the opinions and values of Americans broadly, because so many conservative justices have been put in the court. So with this in mind, the Democrats are under justified pressure to act, and they should have acted a long time ago, obviously, because we've seen this movement of pro-life people, conservative people, trying to invest time, energy, and capital into getting justices on the court who represent their views. And so it's enraging whenever Democrats just sit on their butt until something bad happens and then go, oh, I guess we should maybe try to do something now. And oftentimes they don't even do something then. But what do I mean specifically when I say the Democrats are under pressure to act? Well, one of the things that people have been calling for a long time is for the Democrats to enshrine abortion rights into the Constitution. So what that would do is make it federal law that states have to respect women's right to choose. It would pretty much be Roe v. Wade, but in law form and not in a constitutional ruling. And it would take it out of the hands of the exclusive power of the Supreme Court. But even at times when Democrats had much larger margins in the House, in the Senate, and they had the presidency, namely under Obama, this wasn't accomplished, which led to what we're experiencing today. But it's not too late. At any point now, we could make it, in theory, federal law that states have to respect abortion rights. We don't need the Supreme Court for that. We could do that with our Congress. And the Democrats have the power to do that because they have power in the White House, House of Representatives, and the Senate. So what's standing in the way? Well, you guessed it, the filibuster. I know the filibuster is talked about constantly, so most of you likely are very familiar with the specifics of it, but occasionally I get people who say, I actually don't know exactly what the filibuster is. Could you refresh my memory? So let's just quickly do that. Originally, you needed a majority to pass something. So for example, in the Senate, 50 votes would allow you to pass something, right? Same thing in the House. But then at some point, someone came up with the idea of like, before we pass something, we're required to have an open dialogue, a debate among senators or congresspeople about the thing that we're about to vote on. And there's no rule laid out that says we can't just continue that debate forever. So if we continued talking, and I just talked and talked and talked and never concluded the debate portion of this process, then we could never move to the next part of the process, which is actually voting on the piece of legislation. So when they came up with that, it became a thing where if a party or a member of a party really didn't want something to get passed, they would go up and stand and just talk, monologue for hours upon hours. And we've seen funny representations of that in different forms of media where you're working so hard, and it could be admirable in some situations, up there talking until you have to pee into a bottle or something and you just never go. Okay. Well, then people within the government were like, okay, this is kind of annoying. I don't like every time a piece of legislation comes up that there's any opposition to, we have to sit and listen to someone talk for hours to try to block it. So how about this? We can come up with a new process where we just have to get 60 votes and then it has to conclude the debate section. So you would not be able to just talk infinitely. So that became the new process. As you can see, this isn't constitutional. This is just them coming up with rules for their own processes. So then it was like, now if there's opposition and someone says, hey, I would talk indefinitely if you tried to pass this, then they go, cool. If we can get 60 votes, then we skip that. We don't have to go up against someone who's going to talk indefinitely. If we can't get 60 votes, it's not going to pass pretty much. So what does that do effectively? That brings it from a majority needed in these chambers to 60 votes. It actually started at 66, but it got brought down to 60 at one point. Well, that's weird. Now just all of a sudden, 60 votes are needed in the Senate to pass something. Bizarre. Well, that's where it sits today, where to pass any piece of legislation that isn't wildly bipartisan, and what I mean by that, to pass any piece of legislation that doesn't have a lot of opposition against it or some opposition, you have to get 60 votes. To pass a piece of legislation that does have some level of opposition against it, you have to get 60 votes. Otherwise, someone will raise their hand and say, I would filibuster this. And so that means it would not be able to get passed unless you have enough votes to overcome my filibuster. There's no actual filibustering going on. They're not actually getting up and talking indefinitely. They're just saying, in theory, I filibuster this. So now you have to get 60 votes to overcome that filibuster. So super, super silly. Doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. All that did is arbitrarily bring the amount of votes needed in the Senate up to 60 votes instead of being at 50, which makes more logical sense in a democracy. Okay, well, where we sit today, for most pieces of legislation, you need 60 votes, like I said, to overcome the filibuster. But you can do something because all of this is just Senate rules. You can vote with just a majority to change the Senate rules and make it to where on particular issues or on all issues, you abolish the filibuster, you create a carve-out, and therefore on that particular issue, only 50 votes are needed. So Mitch McConnell did this on judges, where now instead of 60 votes, you just need 50 votes to confirm a federal judge. So what people are pushing for is for the Democrats to do a similar thing with abortion rights. We're going to make a carve-out where on abortion rights, you only need 50 votes to pass a piece of legislation. Great. Sounds good, right? Who's standing in the way of that? Well, two Democratic senators who have become the king and queen of preventing progress, Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. Arizona Democrat Senator Kyrsten Sinema poured cold water Thursday on the Democrats' hopes to codify Roe v. Wade by reforming the Senate filibuster to get around the 60-vote threshold otherwise needed to pass such legislation. So Joe Biden came out and said, you know what, even though I've been against changing the filibuster for much of my career, I would be for a carve-out where we can do a 50-vote margin on abortion rights. Kyrsten Sinema says, no, sir. And so does Joe confirmation on that. CNN anchor Anna Cabrera reported that Sinema's office told her that despite President Joe Biden supporting such an effort, the senator is still opposed to gutting the filibuster on any topic, including on reproductive rights. And then her little teammate, Joe Manchin. Sinema's announcement comes after moderate West Virginia Democrat Joe Manchin, made a similar comment. Quote, I believe we have to codify Roe v. Wade into law, and the way to do that is to make sure Congress votes to do that, Biden said Wednesday while attending a NATO summit in Europe. So I agree with Biden on that. The way that we codify Roe v. Wade into law is by creating a carve-out for the filibuster, giving Congress the ability to actually pass this codification. But Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema stand against that, and that puts us in a place where we pretty much now have 0% chance of getting that protection enshrined into law. So, unfortunately, we are watching rights be stripped away, and the Democrats can't muster the strength or courage to protect Americans. And as with many other issues, the two Democrats standing in the way of making progress in America are Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. Oh my goodness. We'll check comments now. Junk Saint sent a massive super chat saying the people are the ultimate and final court that matters. I agree with you. Thank you so much, Junk Saint. That is incredibly kind. Riviera Luna also sent a super chat. Thank you so much. Great job filling in for David. New fan. You and Pat are closer in style than Farron Cousins, but he is great too. Well, thank you. Yeah, I think both of the people are awesome, and you're awesome for being so kind. You guys are just amazing. Yeah, thank you again, Junk Saint. That's huge. Just want to see if I missed anything. All right, let's go ahead and jump into our next story. All of us now understand that it is somewhat hard to get people to change their mind on Trump. Somewhat hard to say the least. It seems like whatever he does, supporters of him just stick by his side and don't ask questions. So when the January 6th committee began, there was a large question around if they would really be able to make a difference and damage Trump and expose the truth about Trump. And I'll be honest, even I wasn't sure if they would have any real effect, because I've watched time and time again as people dig in their heels, even when concerning details come out about Trump or Trump takes actions that I would think would turn off people to supporting him. But shockingly, because the revelations coming out of these hearings have been so massive and destructive to Trump, the political tides actually do seem to be shifting. We're about to watch a Republican senator say we could have a better candidate than Trump in 2024, which in the Republican Party is sacrilegious to suggest anyone should be Lord Emperor of that party besides Trump. But before we do that, I'll just remind you something we previously looked at, reading from Associated Press. About half of Americans believe former President Donald Trump should be charged with a crime for his role in the U.S. Capitol attack on January 6th, 2021, a new poll suggests. So that's a shift in public opinion. over half of Americans say he should be criminally charged. So that's not saying over half of Americans say they disapprove of him. No, that's the most extreme feeling you could have about a politician, is I think they should be in jail, or at least criminally charged for actions they took while they were in power. That's massive. And that might be contributing to why we're seeing a little bit, if not a large bit, of shift on the conservative side of politics about their feelings in regard to Trump. Even people on Fox News, some hosts on Fox News, we've been seeing shift a little bit on how they talk about this and start recognizing and accepting that Trump really did do some bad stuff in the lead up to January 6th, on January 6th, attempting to overturn the lawful election results. And then now what we're looking at today is Republican Senator Pat Toomey on Bloomberg expressing the sentiment that Trump may not be the right candidate for the Republican Party. Let's take a look.
Let me ask you one political question, if I may. You've been outspoken about what happened in January 6th. Putting aside what you're hearing in the hearings right now, do you think that this effectively means that Donald J. Trump won't get to run for a second term?
Oh, I don't know that it means that. I mean, he gets to decide whether he's going to run, whether or not he's successful. Look, I think he disqualified himself from serving in public office by virtue of his post-election behavior, especially leading right up to January 6th. I think the revelation...
And to be fair, Pat Toomey has been, as this host identified, more outspoken than others, but feeling free to come out and start saying this, and we're seeing again on Fox News, the sentiment a little bit more expressed. It may be more common among Republicans than it was before.
From this committee make his path to even the Republican nomination much more tenuous. You know, never say never, and he decides whether to throw his hat in the ring. But I think we'll have a stronger candidate.
I think we'll have a stronger. Whoa, sorry about that. A stronger candidate than Trump. So I agree, even just from a strategy point of view, if I was a Republican strategist, Trump's not the right guy. Now, unfortunately, it's not like option 2 for the Republican Party. The backup to Trump is amazing. Any other person's going to be very unhinged because the current Republican base is, I with all the respect in the world to the individuals that I know who are a part of this, is pretty unhinged. Some wild views going on. So that's going to be reflected in the individuals that rise to power or rise to relevance and to influence in the Republican Party. So it's not, yay, Trump's gone and now we get a normal, regular, moderate Republican. No, it's still going to be radical. But we do want to at least end the political relevance, the political influence, and the political power of Trump for good. All right, let's check in on the comments. Mike Alexander, I should put my email. I feel like I put my email in there at some point. I didn't? Okay. You can email lukebeasleyofficial@gmail.com. lukebeasleyofficial@gmail.com. Mike, yeah. Do you think he'll be charged? Yeah, I'm actually starting to think he'll be charged now. Man, what a moment we're in, you guys. What we're witnessing, you know? Crazy, crazy stuff. Leslie, yes, I did stream yesterday, 5 p.m. Eastern. Always gonna be here now. The Cult of Dusties? Who's Dusty? Huh. All right, let's jump into our last story of the day. A fascinating piece of information came out of Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony, and it wasn't so much her testimony, but a piece of information that Liz Cheney shared with us at the end of it, where she expressed or articulated the fact that people had been reaching out to individuals who were going to testify, who were planning on testifying in front of the January 6th committee, and effectively threatening them or reminding them the possible repercussions of them telling the truth or testifying. And so Liz Cheney outlined that unnamed, they hadn't yet identified which individuals who testified this had happened to, but they told the story of these individuals getting phone calls where the person on the other side of the phone said, hey, you want to stay in the good graces of the Trump camp? Hey, he is going to be reading the transcripts of your testimony, and we really hope you'll do the right thing during your testimony, suggesting that they maybe shouldn't share certain details, maybe shouldn't share the truth about what happened on January 6th. So that was kind of vaguely laid out by Liz Cheney at the end of Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony. Then there was a moment on CNN where one of the CNN reporters broke down how they had also gotten sources telling them that this was happening, and this is confirmed that potential testifiers in the January 6th committee who are going to testify in front of the January 6th committee are getting phone calls of a somewhat threatening nature about the information that they're going to share. So let's take a look at this revelation on CNN.
Some important new reporting this hour on the January 6th committee and at least one of its witnesses. Sources now tell CNN the panel's star witness from the other day, the former White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson, was contacted by former colleagues in an attempt to influence her testimony. CNN's Caitlin Polance is with us and leading this reporting. This would be a wow. What do you know?
It would indeed. So Cassidy Hutchinson did tell the committee that she was contacted by someone attempting to influence her testimony. This is being confirmed now by Casey Hunt, Ryan Nobles, Zach Cohen, all of our colleagues doing this great reporting. And this is something right now that is fleshing out a mystery that Liz Cheney teed up at this hearing on Tuesday. On Tuesday, as Cassidy Hutchinson is sitting there at the end of the testimony, Liz Cheney turns and says, she raises this specter of witness tampering, and she describes that the committee, as they're bringing witnesses in, has been asking them, has anyone contacted you? Has any former colleagues contacted you? Can you tell us about any attempts to impact your testimony? And Cheney did not reveal who the witnesses were. We can say now one was Cassidy Hutchinson, but both witnesses that Cheney gave examples of received phone calls. And these phone calls, Cheney quoted them being things like people saying, telling witnesses, do the right thing. You want to stay in good graces in the Trump world. Trump does read transcripts of these hearings. Make sure you're aware of that. Another call someone received was that someone was saying to the witness that he, an unnamed person, wants me to let you know he's thinking about you and you're going to do the right thing when you go in for your deposition. So we don't have more information about exactly which one of these examples Cassidy Hutchinson is, but she did sit for 4 closed-door depositions with the committee, and it is something that the committee has promised they'll return to.
And I'm guessing we don't know the answer to this question yet. Congresswoman Cheney, the vice chair, did promise this would come up at a further hearing. Do we know in Cassidy Hutchinson's case who the phone call was from?
We don't at this time.
So unidentified individuals are calling people, including Cassidy Hutchinson and other individuals who testified in front of the January 6th committee before their testimony and saying, do the right thing. We're going to be watching. Trump reads transcripts. You don't want to fall out of the good graces of the Trump camp. And even though none of that's incriminating at all, witness tampering is. The particular phrasing could be perfectly fine if it wasn't within the context that we know it to be. I guess that's the way to say it. So if I was giving a friend advice or talking to a friend before they testified, maybe I would say, I'm going to be watching, do the right thing, completely harmlessly. But because it's coming from the Trump camp, it could be incriminating, because witness tampering is a very serious crime. And if they're trying to influence people not to say certain things, to bend certain details to Trump's favor, that would be witness tampering, but it would be very, very hard to nail someone down on that. Hopefully, as they identified in that video, we might be learning more about these interactions and these phone calls to see if it does rise to the level of witness tampering. Alrighty, that concludes the news section of today's show. We got a wonderful post show, though. Let me get to the comments. I did love the the statement of Trump reads transcripts. Yeah, as if he can read that much. No way. But I'm sure he does. You know, he definitely watches the hearings for sure. So I get what they're trying to say, but the idea that he sits and manually reads all of the transcripts from these testimonies is silly. One of the things I want to look at today in our post show is Liz Cheney. I think she had a debate. Yeah. So she's, running in the GOP primary in Wyoming, and had a debate with more Trumpist candidates who are likely going to attack her over her part in the January 6th committee. So I want to check that out. Hopefully that's interesting to you guys. Thank you, Riviera. Y'all let me know if this sounds fun to you. But since she's come under such fire from the right, I'm fascinated to see how her opponents go after her. It's funny how old school these look when they're not on like major TV.
Who are going to ask the candidates questions this evening, and I'd like to introduce them also to you right now. To my far right is Steve Peck, the longtime newspaper publisher of The Ranger in Riverton and the current public affairs producer at Wyoming PBS. In the center is Bob Beck. He's a longtime news director from Wyoming Public Media. And then Stephen Dow, the governmental affairs reporter from the Sheridan Press. I want to thank Stephen for stepping into the role as panelist this evening. Originally, Christian Saban, the publisher of the Sheridan Press, had planned to be with us.
Yeah, I don't care. No one cares.
Republican Party in Wyoming.
Ms. Hageman?
Yes, thank you, Steve, for
the Republicans' fealty.
Allow us to have a thoughtful, civil discussion.
Yeah, as if.
We expect nothing different. Now, if the panelists are all ready and the candidates are all ready, let's begin the debate tonight. Asking the first question of Ms. Hageman is Steve Peck.
Candidates, good evening. Last night, in an appearance at the Presidential Library of a Republican icon, Ronald Reagan, Representative Cheney said both the Republican Party and American democracy are threatened by too many Republicans' fealty to an individual instead of party, principle, and constitution. She got a standing ovation there, but in other circles she's become an outcast among Republicans, including having been drummed symbolically out of the party in Wyoming. You all are running for Wyoming's only seat in the House. What does this divergence of views...
Wyoming only has one House representative. That's hilarious. That's how tiny it is. Let's look up the population. Population Wyoming. Oh my gosh. It's smaller than like one city in, California. That's crazy. 589,000.
Views mean for this race, and what does it say about the state of the Republican Party in Wyoming?
Ms. Hageman?
Yes, thank you, Steve, for the question. My first response is that we're not a democracy, we're a republic. And I think that that is an extremely important distinction, and I think that it's one that is missed by the statements that...
So dumb. We are a constitutional republic, and a representative democracy. I love how they just realized that republic is within the identification of our type of government. And they're like, aha, this gives us the cover we need now to be super anti-democratic. No, we have a government that is meant to represent the people, which makes it democratic. And the way in which we do that is set up in a certain way, which makes it a republic. And then it's obviously representative because we're not directly voting on legislation, but people are going in to do that on our behalf. But yes, we are a democratic country.
That are made last night. We're not, our republic is not in danger because of President Donald J. Trump. President Trump was an excellent president for the United States of America and especially for the state of Wyoming. The threat to our republic really comes from other sources, including the fact that right now we're seeing that we have two different systems of justice in this country, where we have one system of justice where you have people like Hunter Biden or Hillary Clinton or even Joe Biden who are not accountable or held accountable.
Why are her eyes so wide? That's funny.
For the decisions and the bad acts that they undertake. We have a situation, what we saw in Portland, where you have rioters attack.
She's like, Hunter Biden. It's funny.
The federal courthouse and federal agents. You have billions of dollars of damage being done to our cities through rioting, and the people are not held accountable for those things. Yet you have the conservatives or Republicans who are being punished for expressing a First Amendment right, for exercising their First Amendment rights. I do not believe that the Republican Party is at some kind of an impasse where we're splitting into these splinter groups. I think that the Republican
Party... I know, it cracks me up to Matt Tokamak's point that people still bring up Hillary Clinton. I'm like, she's so irrelevant. Why are you bringing up the Clintons? What the heck?
Is actually very united in the fact that that the current administration is an absolute disaster. We need to retake the House and the Senate
She's so
so that
crazy.
we can block
This
his
is
agenda,
nuts.
and we need to further the conservative agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Hegman. Ms. Blinsky.
This is going to be fun. Oh my gosh.
Yes, I did see that last night, and I believe, yes.
Hey, to the Republican Party in Wyoming's credit, look, of the top candidates, 3 of them are women. That's kind of crazy.
We are a republic.
And by crazy, I mean, you know, good. That's cool. A lot of times that's not as well represented in the Republican Party.
You have the right to our First Amendment right to have been at the Capitol, to have been able to express our...
Yes, it's our First Amendment right to storm the Capitol and break it down and assault police officers and try to stop a lawful election process. Yes, that falls under the First Amendment.
Our disdain of what happened on that day. Anyway, the fact of the matter is we have a system of government that is divided, where we cannot have actual oh gosh
oh no.
See, anyway, where we don't get justice for the people who actually...
Oh my God, that hurt me. That hurt me so bad. We have to watch that again, but I think I just vomited. Oh my gosh. That was excruciating. Think of another word. Don't keep trying to think of the same word. Just change the sentence. Like, you don't have to say what you were thinking.
Our disdain of what happened on that day. Anyway, the fact of the matter is we have a system of government that is divided, where we cannot have actual
accountability.
Oh gosh. See, anyway, where we don't get justice for the people who actually are innocent in some of these situations. We have people who have destroyed cities. I used to walk downtown Portland, Oregon. Portland, Oregon used to be beautiful, but
I have never seen someone look for a word that long on stage. Like, that's what you do when you're at a dinner table with people and you're like, God, what's the word? What's the word? What am I thinking of? Juxtaposition? No. Comparison, no. You don't do that on a debate stage. Whew.
They destroyed everything.
Shut up, Doug.
Those folks have gone away unpunished, yet we have J6 people who are stuck in jail with no due process, and that to me is a travesty. And as far as the Republican Party goes, we need to stand firm, yes, but we are divided, unfortunately, and we need to make sure that we take care of making sure that we have the right representation and the relatable people.
I agree with you, but in your explanation, you made it so clear that you are not the right representation. You're not even good at being a crazy right-winger. Come on now.
To fill those positions.
At least the last girl got through everything she was trying. Sorry, I should never say that. I didn't mean that. At least the last woman got through what she was trying to say.
Thank you, Ms. Belinsky. Representative Cheney.
Well, thank you very much, Craig, and it's wonderful, as always, to be here at Sheridan College. Wonderful to be here for the debate tonight. I think these are really serious issues, and I think absolutely there's no question that what we saw happen on January 6th was clearly an attempt to delay the count of the electoral votes. Anybody who was there understands the violence that was involved. I'm frankly stunned that one of my opponents on the stage, who is a member of the Wyoming Bar, who has sworn an oath, as many of us on this stage have, to the Constitution, would be in a position where she is suggesting that somehow what happened on January 6th was justified, or that somehow what happened that day, the people have the right to ignore the rulings of the courts. We are, in fact, a nation of laws. And we are a nation of laws only if we defend our constitutional republic. And as I made clear last night, we have to put our oath to the Constitution above party. The Republican Party has a long and a storied history of embracing the conservative values that I believe in very strongly, of limited government, low taxes, and a strong national defense. But we are now embracing a cult of personality, and I won't be part of that, and I will always stand for my oath and stand for the truth.
Thank you, Representative Cheney. Senator Bouchard.
Thank you. You know, it's a lot of distraction, because we aren't talking about the real issues that the people of Wyoming care about, like putting fuel in their fuel tank. We're focused on something that happened that people disagree on. Certainly, my opponent has a certain view that she is stuck to, but the Republican, as a whole, they're tired of it. They're tired of the rhetoric. My opponent says she stands for the Constitution, but in 2017 she didn't care about repealing Obamacare. And that's one of the things that got me awake.
What? How is repealing Obamacare protecting the Constitution? God, I feel like I can smell. It's like I can smell the poopy smell of what he's saying, because it came out so far from up his butt. Sorry.
Is Obama. And I think I'm one of the most unique candidates here, because I started out as a grassroots activist and crossed over to the dark side. Now I'm in the Senate. But the issues that are important to the voters are what's happening to our economy right now. We haven't heard from...
Mike, I'm not seeing your email. You sent it to lukebeasleyofficial@gmail.com? I'm not seeing it. Let's see if it's in my spam. Nope. Huh. I don't know. Try sending it again. Just making sure the spelling is all correct. Luke Beasley Official.
Congress, any talk about stopping the printing presses. We have created an inflation, and that's in both parties. You can't stop omnibus spending in D.C. and with either party. They both spend money like drunken sailors. And that's a real problem. We have people that are trying to figure out how to put fuel in their tanks so they can get to work.
Thank you, Senator Bouchard. Colonel Knapp.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll start with talking about why I'm running to answer this question. And I've not been a politician. I've been a servant all my life in the Army, and that shapes how I think. And I came in because of what I saw happen.
What really fascinates me is whenever candidates in the Republican Party don't believe the election was stolen, but also don't want to take a stance like Liz Cheney. So they don't want to scream at Liz Cheney for standing up, with the opinions that or the stance that she has, but they also don't want to have to stand up themselves. So it's weird because they'll kind of like weasel out, and that's the vibe I get from the guy we just saw, and then this guy is he could turn and go really anti-democracy, but so far it sounds like the type of people who go, this is a distraction. Let's talk about the real issues. It's like, well, is it though? Because we can't really solve the real issues if we don't have a democracy, and that's what we're talking about here.
With the federal government, and the fact that I could do something, so a step forward for that. We've devolved into a two-party system for the most part in the country, and if you're not on those party lines, often you're shoved to the side. I've been a Republican all my life. I believe in those platform for the Wyoming.
What platform? There's no Republican platform anymore. I don't like the last Republican general election platform in 2020 was "We stand with Donald Trump, but we don't have a formal platform." Like that was literally what they had to release. Usually you release a list of issues, but Trump was so incoherent in the issues he stood for that they had to just release that. I don't get it. And yeah, as Jared said, you can talk about multiple issues at the same time. We can stand up for democracy and talk about high gas prices.
As well as the United States Republican platform, and I've tried to follow that. So I don't believe it's a cult of personality that we need to worry about. It's about somebody get in and do action in Congress for 2 years and to make those changes. Right now, rule of law has been brought up. The checks and balances I've seen been gone from our three-party.
So I will say, if you're someone who's really gifted at public speaking, then doing your best to not look down at your notes is good. Look at the camera, speak profoundly, awesome. But if you're someone who knows yourself and knows, like at the beginning of the debate, I'm going to get a little nervous, so I should bring notes, then do it and just look down like he's doing. Just keep looking down, because what he's doing is much better than what the other candidate did, the one who could not think of what she was trying to say.
Sorry, our three parts of government. We've got court interpretation of laws. We've got executive orders that have been issued massively to open our borders. A lot of things on the monetary flow from the World Bank. All those things are executive orders that were signed on the first day of President Biden's presidency. And the fact that the Congress, and Representative Cheney's here, the Congress needs to take control to ensure that legislation is made and those are followed. And we've got to support our police, everybody that enforce that rule, our Border Patrol, and continue that. Our election process needs to get better.
Thank you, Colonel Knapp.
Okay, really? If you're going to do a debate and have a little noise that notifies people when they've gone over, that's fine. I love that. I even love muting a mic when your time's up. That's cool too. But if you're going to do that, let's make it a little bit of a lower pitch than the one we just heard. I don't know if you noticed, but it's like, ee! It sounds like a dog whistle, but we're hearing it. We're going to hear a lot of dog whistles tonight. There you go.
Ms. Hageman, you have an opportunity for a 30-second rebuttal if you'd like to take it.
You bet. The biggest threat to our republic is the current administration and the corruption of our various institutions.
Is it? Is it? Is it? Because no matter what Joe Biden does in office, at the end of it, he's going to respectfully, if he loses let's say he ran again, no matter what he tries to do in office, he will concede to the winner if someone else wins and help to create a peaceful transition of power. And that's what keeps our democratic republic standing strong. It is people like you who are totally fine as long as it's in favor of your own candidate to throw out democracy who are really threatening what we have.
The Department of Justice, the FBI, the other things that have happened over the last couple of years. And what we have is we have a committee in Congress right now that they're focusing on something that happened 18 months ago. They're not focusing on the issues that are important to the people in Wyoming, and they're also ignoring the corruption that is absolutely destroying Washington, D.C., and as a result, taking down the rest of the country.
Thank you, Ms. Hagan.
Why is that the
second
noise?
question will be asked by Bob Beck. Ms. Blinsky, you'll...
Jared said, I didn't hear it. Playing drums since I was 9 has ruined being able to hear whatever pitch that sound you were talking about is in. So, yeah, it's funny. There's this episode of 30 Rock where a certain pitch can only be heard by people below a certain age, and then a certain pitch can only be heard by someone above a certain age. It's so funny because one of the characters like wants to appear young, and so then they play the young tone, and she's like, "Oh, are you playing it? I can hear it. I can hear it." And like we weren't playing it, and then they play the old tone, and she's like, "I can't hear it," and you can tell that she's hearing it. But that's like what Jared just experienced. He's beat up his ears too much where he can't hear the young people's tones, I guess. Whoa, it's a C sharp. No, do you think? Any perfect pitch people in the audience?
I'll answer first.
Ms. Blinsky, I'm hearing many of you downplay the events of January 6th. I'm hearing from people who have a different concern. And so why aren't you more concerned about those events and the fact that some leading people from the Trump administration said his goal was to overturn the election?
Because I have actually watched several hours of video myself from every angle possible and have done my own due diligence on this. I believe, again, this is a distraction from what is actually going on in our country right now. We don't need to be spending this kind of money and time on a situation where, again, we have lawlessness in our country. Instead of dealing with those issues, we're dealing with something that, again, happened a while ago and was a setup from the beginning for the election.
What? Make a point that is understandable. God. No, the reason why we're going over something that happened a while ago is because it is likely it will happen again, possibly successfully this time, which is overturning lawful election results if we don't get all of the information out of what happened, if we don't hold the proper people accountable, etc.
Situation. Our voices, we the people, were stifled. We the people, First Amendment right was washed out the door. And so, you know, to me, this is a waste of time and our resources to go after something that we should be going after the lawlessness in our country first.
Thank you, Ms. Blinsky. Representative Cheney.
Well, thank you. You know, I think that there's a real tragedy that's occurring. And the tragedy is that there are politicians in this country, beginning with Donald Trump, who have lied to the American people. And people have been betrayed.
Yes.
He consistently has said that the election was stolen when it wasn't. When it's absolutely clear the courts decided, the courts determined the outcome, as you've seen, as you've watched our hearings, for example, predominantly, maybe entirely Republican witnesses from the former Attorney General, the former Deputy Attorney General, from the head of the Trump campaign, including one individual from New Jersey, Mr. Stepien, who's now advising one of my opponents in this race, who said that he believes that the election was not stolen. In fact, he wanted to be part of Team Normal, that those people who said the election was stolen were not part of Team Normal. So I'd be interested to know whether or not my opponent, Ms. Hageman, is willing to say here tonight that the election was not stolen. She knows it.
Guys, we all have to recognize, yes, I get it. If anyone says this to me, I'm going to virtually in a video game smack you around. But I know that Liz Cheney is bad. Let me be clear. She's bad historically in her policies. And she's a Republican who has been wrong on many, many, many issues. Okay? But I like to feel joy sometimes. All right. I don't want to just walk around and hate everything about the world all the time. I can't live like that. So whenever I can root for someone in a certain setting, a certain context, let me freaking do it. And right now I want to root for Liz Cheney and feel super happy whenever she gets dunks on people, even though I recognize on most things we would never be allies, and she's participated in a party that has done a lot of damage. Yes. But it takes some level of integrity to jeopardize your entire career to stand up for democracy. So with that being said, I'm going to be rooting for her. If anyone responds to me rooting for her in this debate by being like, do you know the bad things she's done in the past? I'm going to be very angry, okay? Because I recognize it. But she's showing a lot of character in this moment, and I want to respect that and cheer her on right now.
It wasn't stolen. I think that she can't.
So she just said, which is awesome. Let's watch this again, which is so true. All the, the person she's directing this towards knows the election wasn't stolen, but they keep saying it. And I was a little concerned she was going to try to soften up in these debates on this issue to maybe like win back people. But no, she's staying strong, and that's awesome.
My opponent, Ms. Hageman, is willing to say here tonight that the election was not stolen. She knows it wasn't stolen. I think that she can't say that it wasn't stolen because she's completely beholden to Donald Trump. And if she says it wasn't stolen, he will not support her. So we've got to be honest. We have to be truthful. Elected officials, in particular, public servants, owe that to those people we represent.
Thank you, Representative Cheney. Senator Bouchard.
It's a kangaroo court. Congress, that's not Congress's job to pretend that they're the court.
Oh my gosh, that's so crazy how you literally don't have any understanding whatsoever, not even of a 5-year-old, of the United States Constitution and the concept of separation of powers. Because yes, it is Congress's responsibility to hold the executive branch accountable, hold them responsible for their actions. And so sometimes you have to do that retrospectively. Sometimes when a president does something horribly at the end of his presidency, Congress is going to use its authority. That's why they have subpoena power. That's why they have this process set up so that they can do such hearings, such testimonies, stuff like that, is so that they can hold the other forms of our government accountable. And that's what they're doing right now with these hearings. So no, you're just wrong. You're just really wrong. And I wish you could go and cry forever about how wrong you are. Oh.
They have continually made this circus on TV. If it's a charge, then
hey, Karis is in the chat. I got your email, like skimmed it, and then started live streaming. So I didn't have a chance to respond, but I will shoot you back an email ASAP.
Don't we let law enforcement deal with it in the courts? Congress has a bone to pick, and that's the problem with that committee. They have a bone to pick. They don't want President Trump, and they're pushing back. And quite frankly, the American public is sick and tired of it. And to say that elections are always square, we know in several states they use COVID, they use the ballot process. What about Facebook using the system to steer people? We know for a fact all the major...
Yes, and that benefits conservatives way more than it does liberals, the current Facebook algorithm.
Internets do that. We also know that there were ballot boxes placed by Mr. Zuckerberg. We know things that happened because of COVID balloting in several states. Georgia doesn't do something that Wyoming does. They don't purge that list.
Wyoming.
A lot of ballots got mailed out. We know this. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. We know this happened. We know it happens in Colorado. Ballots get mailed out in Colorado.
So here's an example of someone who doesn't want to take the hard stance of the wacko lady and be like, election was stolen, blah, 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 but wants to cast doubt enough to be somewhat beloved in the hearts and minds of people who do believe that. And so he's not going to directly go after Liz Cheney, but he's going to go, well, what about this? What about that? Squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. Because I don't know if you remember, but the question that's being brought up right now is about the 2020 election being stolen. And he just completely went on a tangent about something else because he wants to be legitimate for...
Consistently.
He wants to seem legitimate for the people who understand that the election wasn't stolen. So the legitimate, stance, and then wants to seem super doubtful over the election for the election deniers.
To people who aren't voting.
Thank you, Senator. Colonel Knapp.
So first of all, our nation is based on our Constitution. And 34 years ago, 1987, I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, and I take that very seriously. We should have a peaceful transition of power. And it's been that way for over 250 plus years of our nation being able to do that. And I had time in Iraq where I actually had to help support their elections. And I'm sorry to say theirs went a lot smoother than this last one here. Some of the things that happened is states didn't follow their own laws. And there was lack of transparency, lack of accountability in mail-in ballots, and other things that occurred. So people often ask, was the election stolen? And not to give a cop-out answer, because it's not. I say most Americans don't know. You have some.
Wow, I thought he was about to go in the correct direction, but now he went in the most disgusting direction, which is, I don't want to take a stance on this, so I'm going to instead make it about some arbitrary elements of the last election that I can point to seem concerned, and the fact that public opinion reveals that a lot of people believe the election was stolen. Yeah, I wonder why a lot of Americans believe the election was stolen. It's almost like an entire political movement, starting at the very top with Donald Trump, conducted a plot to convince their entire following of that fact, of that anti-fact, of that lie. Just because a lot of Americans believe something doesn't mean it's true. Doesn't mean we have to even give 1 second of thought to it if it's been verified to be false time and time again.
Court rulings in some states, some audits that have taken place. But the problem is we've lost trust and confidence in our election process, and that is the only way we have to change our government. And
Shia said, I'm kind of shocked at the level of diversity on the stage. I know, I had the same thought. There's 3 women, and this guy, I don't know specifically, but he seems Latino, and the other guy does too. So that's much more diverse than the typical Republican stage.
The representatives that we sent. So until we fix that, and we got an election coming up in 2024 and this one in November, will we have trust and confidence in our system? And I think we have to take a hard look at that as far as how we do business. One of the things that we do is look at lessons learned. I think it's important that we have audits, that we have investigations when something occurs to find out what happened and how to fix it.
That's crazy. It's almost like we did have that in all the battleground states, and they all revealed that Biden won. Some of them revealed he won by more than the original count.
As a cause of it. And so we've got the commission that was established. Unfortunately, it's got 2 Republicans on it. And our initial suggestions for the manning of that was denied by the Speaker of the House. So, you talk about equal treatment, we got to start there.
Thank you, Colonel Knapp. Ms. Hageman?
Yeah, I think that this is an example of how the press and certain people have obsessed over January 6th, because now we've had 2 questions in this debate, and they've both been focused on that. I've traveled over 30,000 miles around the state of Wyoming since I started this. I'm the only one up here who's actually been out there campaigning in the state of Wyoming to that extent in meeting with the people. The only time that the J6 situation ever comes up is when people talk about how unfair this entire committee is. They're terribly concerned about the lack of due process. They're concerned about the fact that there's no ability to confront or cross-examine witnesses. And they also recognize with these...
This woman is quite unhinged.
Hearings that you might have 15 hours of videotaped depositions, and the committee shows 13 seconds of something or 2.5 minutes of something. What people are concerned about in terms of the J6 committee is it's just totally unfair and so contrary to everything that our country stands.
I'm trying to find polling on Wyoming so we can see where these candidates stand as of now. Latest polls by Club for Growth and says Harriet, the crazy lady, is beating Liz Cheney. Wow. That's crazy. I wish I could get the specific numbers. this is favorability, but I want to see percentage of people saying who they would vote for. Her favorability is only 30. Wait, what? %, 70. Okay, but what is? Anyways, you get the point. I just wanted to know if Harriet Hagerman, which is the lady talking right now, was winning, and she is in the polling right now.
Stands for. And again, I think that the press and people associated with that, the Democrats who want to deflect attention from the failures of the Biden administration, the people who want to deflect attention from all the troubles in this country.
Yeah, she does seem like a really mean principal.
Talk about January 6th, but that's not what the people in Wyoming are talking about. What they're talking about is the gas prices. They're talking about food prices. They're talking about the fact that they can't travel. In addition to which, we have serious questions about the 2020 election. Time magazine described the Zuckerberg $500 million as an absolute game changer in terms of what happened with that election.
Ms. Hageman, thank you. You have an opportunity for a rebuttal, Ms. Blinsky.
In my travels around Wyoming, and I have put in the miles too, where the folks that are here in Wyoming could really care less about the January 6th situation. They are more concerned about their farms, their ranches, their businesses, being able to put their kids in school, being able to actually put gas in their car or pay rent.
Oh, okay, Karis. Good night.
Rent or their mortgages. So the J6 thing has been turned off completely. And I don't see a lot of people actually.
It's funny because that's not true. I mean, maybe among the people that you hang out with, whatever her name is, but polling is showing lots of Americans are having their views changed on based on these hearings, and ratings show lots of Americans are tuning in to these hearings.
Spending time with that.
Thank you, Ms. Blinsky. Our next question will be asked by Stephen Dow to Representative Cheney.
Should bipartisan cooperation still be the goal in Washington, D.C., or is it unachievable at this time?
Well, thank you for the question. It's a really important question. And I think that when you look at the challenges that our nation is facing, they are serious. You know, we are looking at the challenges internationally that we're facing, the threats that we're facing from Russia, from...
I am curious how much she's going to criticize Biden. Because, you know, from the public appearances she's made recently, because it's been so January 6th related, she's pretty much indistinguishable in appearance rhetorically from a Democrat. But obviously this is a Republican primary debate, so I'm curious if she has some slams against Biden.
From North Korea, from China, from Iran. We're looking at the challenges that we face here at home, the economic challenges, the policies of the Biden administration, which certainly are causing inflation that is higher than we've seen in 40 years, the kind of energy policies and tax policies that we know are hurting our families, we know are hurting our communities. We also, though, have a toxicity and a vitriol that is absolutely tearing our country apart. And I think we've got to elect serious leaders. We have to elect leaders who will take their oath of office seriously, who will abide by their oath of office. We have to elect leaders who won't simply say what they think people want to hear. And I think in this country today, there are some people who have been betrayed. There are some people who may actually believe the election was stolen, despite the fact that in each case, and the audits that have been mentioned up here, for example, Georgia was mentioned. In each case, the Republican officials from those states have made clear that the audits and the recounts were done, the courts decided, but we need to be clear that we're going to abide by the rulings of the courts and that we're a nation of laws.
Thank you, Representative Cheney. Senator Bouchard?
You know, if you followed my races, you'll see that they were pretty brutal. I mean, you've seen the liberal Republicans come after me.
Who is following your races? No one, literally no one cares about you. I'm just kidding. I think he's in the state Senate right now. Apologies, that's a really important position, but the average viewer watching this was not following Senator Bouchard's state Senate race and the specifics of the attack ads against you.
And running a primary, and then you'll see the Democrats came after me and spent 3 times as much money. And It was conservative Republicans that voted for me. And when you go to do the job, that's how I vote. That's why I have 5 years of a record with American Conservative Union, and I get an award every year for those 5 years. Everybody wants to say, oh, we all got to get along, and it's all about bipartisanship. No, it's not. The people that elected me wanted me to go do a job in the Senate. And and I do understand that the other side doesn't like my voting record because they want me to vote more liberal. But that's not how the system works. The one part.
Such a weird. Okay, whatever.
That we have democracy is in the election. And that's what it's about. I go there into the Wyoming Senate to represent the people that put me there.
He says Wyoming, so weird. Wyoming, Wyoming Senate, that's so weird.
And that's why I had a tough re-election, but I made it through it. I won. And I don't budge. And the other side doesn't like it.
Oh, to people asking what viewers of the show are going to be called, we had someone say the Beehive. You come here for the buzz? That's pretty. Oh yeah, see? No, it's not. It can't be the Bees Hive. That's weird. It has to be the Beehive. Wyoming. Wyoming. So I don't know, but y'all can choose.
But it's okay. If they don't like it, they can take another shot at the next election. That's the system.
Here's what we'll do. We'll do a super chat auction, and you just put the name with a super chat, and we just whoever can put the highest super. No, kidding.
Thank you, Senator Bouchard. Colonel Knapp.
Yes, as far as bipartisan cooperation.
Yeah, and then every time, like if I'm in a debate or I'm like ranting about something, if I make a point that is like hype and you really agree with it and just want to like show virtual claps, you just put a bunch of bee emojis in the chat. That's pretty epic, I gotta say.
What it's about is leadership, and the job description is representative. And so out of the 200,000 plus voters in the state of Wyoming, it's about what they want, and that we carry that forward to fight it in Congress. One of the things that's missing now is...
I guess if y'all are the Beehive, that makes me the queen bee. Just kidding.
Part of negotiation. And as Senator Bouchard mentioned, you know, it's a dogfight in there, especially when you start having separation of two major parties in the same room. But who in that room is going to go forward and ensure that they're representing their people by doing negotiations and ensuring that things aren't inserted into bills. As Speaker of the House said, let's pass this so we know what's in it. That type of attitude from leadership is what's wrong right now. And it drives division between our lawmakers and their opportunities to go and work together for the benefit of people. And that's something that's lost right now. This idea of rhino, which, you know, I think all of us have probably called it sometime. I've been a Republican, you know, not a Republican in name only. I've been asked about Frontier Republican. I said, I don't know what that is. You know, so the division within our own party in the state of Wyoming as well as in the United States is detrimental to what we're trying to do. And that's...
I love the Yas Queens in the chat after my Queen Bee statement. Good stuff. And then all the bee emojis. Because, guys, whenever I'm doing this type of streaming, I can look over and read all your comments. But the cool thing about the bee emoji is it's like bright and yellow. And so whenever I'm doing a debate or like in a serious rant about something, if your form of like clapping is bee emojis, I can just glance to the chat and see if y'all are hyped by how yellow it is. That's very good. Now I just got to get a debate ready, scheduled. I feel like it's been a while. I guess we sort of had an abortion debate last night, but not really.
Remove Joe Biden, President Joe Biden's administration, and get our country back under control.
Thank you, Colonel Knapp. Ms. Hageman.
You know, it's been interesting to me being involved in politics as long as I have. Typically when people talk about bipartisanship in Congress, they're usually talking about when will the Republicans cave. I don't see bipartisanship.
Oh, no way. It's always the opposite. It's always Democrats like taking a really conservative stance whenever there's bipartisanship. Not always, but a lot of times. Oh my gosh, all the yellow emojis in the chat from Super G-Force.
On the Democrat side, what I see is the moving forward of an agenda that's been extremely destructive to this country. And that's why we're $30 trillion in debt. That's why we have the disaster on the southern border. It's why we are seen as being very weak on the international stage and the situation with Russia.
Wait, Matthew Giannotoni? Giannoti. Thank you, Tony. See ya. It's okay if he is, but is he? Is he what? Who? I'm confused. Who's what? I'm confused. What's happening? And also important at AF? What is? Let me know. What are you saying?
Ukraine. So what I think is that, what I see is that for a long time, I believe there's been a uniparty back in Washington, D.C., made up of Democrats and Republicans, and they don't necessarily care who's in power just so long as they are. But they're not moving forward with the agenda or the issues that are of concern to the American people. So the way I look at this is that the last 30 years have been terribly destructive to the United States because Congress...
Oh, you were asking if he was Asian. Gotcha. I thought you were asking something about me. I always get really curious. Whenever I feel like someone was asking a question about me and then I don't know what it is. But you're asking about the candidate. Gotcha. A great slogan takes a panel of experts, not some orange child. What slogan? Am I the orange child or Trump? Is someone hating on our beehive slogan? No? No, doesn't look like it.
Congressional representatives have abdicated their responsibility of actually legislating, and they've turned it over to unelected bureaucrats and agencies. So what I see is that when I get back there, and if I'm elected as our representative for Wyoming, we're going to have to work to roll back.
Oh, yes, Matthew, bees are really important. True, and they're dying right now.
30 years of really bad policies.
Thank you, Ms. Hagman. Ms. Blinsky.
So this is what we actually would need is some term limits maybe for some of these folks that have been so entrenched, and be able to bipartisanship is important only if you have two recognizable parties, by the way. So in speaking even with Democrats in my tribe,
it may be because she failed so miserably at the beginning, but every time she talks now, I'm like so uncomfortable.
People are willing, but yet they're kind of stuck. And if we're going to ever get ahead or move forward on anything, we do need to work together. We do need to network. And I'm hoping that if we can unseat the entrenched, we will be able to do that. But for now, it is very important that we try to...
Jared said this lady looks like a sitcom character's confused best friend. True.
Make a way where it doesn't seem to be one, folks, because we do need to make a difference and make sure that we can do that. But for now, it is very important that we try to make a way where it doesn't seem to be one, folks, because we do need to make...
Oh, it hurts so bad. Oh, I know that she has terrible views, but I still feel bad for her. Brutal. That is so brutal. Whenever you are so twisted in your own words, like you're so lost in your sentence that you have to verbally express it with a I'm just so like defeated at what I was trying to say. Sorry, I know y'all hate this, but I gotta watch that one more time. She's cracking me up. She's my new favorite.
We we try to make a way where it doesn't seem to be one, folks, because we do need to make a difference and make sure that we can take back our country. And it's not happening by what's going on right now. All the distractions, all the things that people are really concerned about are being shoved under the carpet, and we need to have those addressed immediately.
Thank you, Ms. Belinsky. Representative Cheney.
I think we all would agree that the issues that we face are
Hey,
big
by the way,
issues.
whenever I was really young, when I was like 6 months old, I lived in New Zealand, actually. So yeah, I love New Zealand. I went back there when I was older, and it is such a nice country. What the heck?
That the way that we make sure that the solutions are those that we believe in as Republicans is that we convince people to vote for Republicans. And the way that we do that is by treating the voters with respect, by arguing about substance, and by making sure that we stand for principles.
All I'm saying is the one thing that is a benefit to Liz Cheney is if she loses this congressional race, she is going to have the bougiest job in media you've ever seen. Every show is going to be wanting to pay her the big bucks to be on it. Because, like, the obsession of CNN and MSNBC and stuff is Republicans who will speak out, you know, against Trump and stuff. And she's really good at speaking as well. And so she would make a really good, like, correspondent. And I bet you there's going to be a bidding war for her if she loses her congressional race.
But we also realize at the end of the day, we're all Americans.
Thank you, Representative Cheney. The next question asked by Steve Peck for Senator Bouchard.
Wyoming's 3-member congressional delegation
Oh, gotcha, Nick Rich, 56. I see what you mean. I see what you're saying now.
all oppose the huge federal infrastructure project that nevertheless passed and is bringing billions of dollars to the state now. With that said, what are your feelings about one-time federal dollars coming to Wyoming to build or improve infrastructure projects that often were built with federal dollars in the first place?
Well, interesting. We talked about bipartisanship, and I'll tell you about this.
That reminds me, a really important thing that Republicans forget is like, get the federal government out of our business. But the like give and take of states to the federal government. So how much does the state pay in federal taxes? And then how much in return do they get in investments from the federal government? Red states get way more money spent by the federal government into the red state than the state pays out in taxes compared to blue states. Like, I'm pretty sure California pays out more than they get, if I'm not mistaken. But I know for sure that red states are the ones who have the biggest deficit between how much they get from the federal government and how much they get paid tax, which I'm happy with. It's because a lot of those states are like impoverished and stuff, so they have a lot of need for the programs that the federal government provides. But it is hilarious because, like, I think that interviewer or that host moderator was alluding to is a lot of the projects that have helped Wyoming a lot of the infrastructure built and stuff was from federal dollars. So are you against that?
Senate. The state Senate only has 2 Democrats.
Yeah, I'll pull up a map.
It's a Republican majority. And you talk about federal money, American Rescue Plan would be one of those, right? So I can talk about that for a second. You look at the votes in the Wyoming Senate, and you'll see that a Republican majority voted for that. And to be honestly fair.
Okay, this is perfect. Oh, shoot. This is old. Let me see. I'll see if I can find a more updated one, but this is the one that popped up quickly. But I mean, the massive spending elements of this haven't changed. So what it's analyzing is federal taxes minus spending. So you take how much does the state pay in federal income tax or federal taxes, and then how much do they get back in money? And if they get back less than they pay in taxes, it's dark green. And then it goes down to light green, and then once it dips below where they're actually getting more money spent in by the federal government than they're paying out, it turns this color, and then this color. So you can see primarily all the states that pay less than they get are red states. So they actually benefit from the federal government. What does that mean? That means the deficits created over here, to Texas's credit, that's a red state, and it also is in the same category as California, but primarily all these blue states, and the most dark green are like the northeastern blue states, are funding all of the support that the red states get, right? Which again, I'm fine with. If there's needs in these states because they have higher poverty rates, then I do think they should, we should help them out. I'm great with that. That's progressivism. But point is, when they complain about like the federal government and all that type of stuff, they're actually the ones benefiting the most from it. Let me see if any of these are more recent. I just don't, this is a very specific thing to ask for, so I don't know how often they make these, but I'll look. And I also want to show you one other thing, but we'll watch this while I'm finding it.
All the Republicans voted against that measure in Congress. And then that bill comes to Wyoming, that money comes to Wyoming, and the majority of Republicans vote for it. I'm one of the guys that said, no, let's not appropriate that money. Because they didn't talk about it's a carrot that has a stick. They're not talking about all the ties to that money and what you have to do as a state. And that's one of the things that Sandra Day O'Connor ruled in the 90s.
This is a confusing looking chart, but it's more recent. You would have to look at it a long time, but you can see the big ones are the amount received versus the amount spent in taxes. And so a lot of those ones that they get more in federal spending than they pay out in taxes are the red states. But then I want to look at, I always like taking off screen because I don't want y'all to like judge me whenever I type in a question and it's like spelled horribly.
That they can't tell the states what to do, but they can bribe them with money. And we are doing that. Fortunately, I've worked on the inside in the Senate. I know where the money comes from, and it falls on deaf ears in the Senate. We need somebody to know.
Guys, this is shocking. Republican policies, they do the good stuff. Really? Really? Because this is states ranked by poverty, and so number one is the most impoverished, so Puerto Rico, but then Mississippi, Louisiana, New Mexico, West Virginia, Kentucky, Arkansas, Alabama, and then we get to district. The first blue state is 9th, or blue, territory. And then Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, Texas, Arizona, North Carolina is sometimes blue. And then it starts getting more diverse as far as blue-red. Isn't that crazy? All of the most impoverished states, which, again, I want them to get the support they need, but they pretend like we live in a false reality where democratic policies create this poverty, but it can't be the case, can it? Ooh, population below the poverty line. It's pretty light up here in the super blue areas. That's crazy. Lord have mercy. Anyways, that's that. And if people have like a thing against Wikipedia, because we can look at it more official. You can see the top things are ranked very similarly from World Population Review, which is really good, credible stuff. So same top red states. Anyways. Oh, actually, one other thing I want to look at is we're learning today. Today is a work day. Economy, performance. So this is interesting. Okay, ready? We're going to look at GDP growth nationwide, depending on presidents. I want a chart. Here we go. Average annual GDP growth during presidential terms, right? So under Hoover, garbage. Roosevelt, it went up a lot. Truman, down. Eisenhower, up, all the way over here. And then you can see in recent, to Reagan's credit, it did grow a lot. But then the thing that people have such a hard time understanding is that people are like, Trump created the best economy in the world. No, he inherited a great economy, and it continued at the rate it was going, but sort of slower than it was under Obama. This is the thing people have a really hard on, like, same thing with unemployment. Let's see. Unemployment. See, this is what I don't like when I get judged for. Unemployment. Let's see. Decrease. Rates by president. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for change. We need change. What's this? Okay, I'll look for the point I'm trying to illustrate in a second here. Because you got to look at what is the change done under a certain president. And when you look at that, it's always much better and democratic.
Knows how it works on this side and go on that side of the fence and say no there and come back and tell the Senate and the House here in Wyoming why we should be a no.
Thank you, Senator. Colonel Knapp.
Oh, totally. The president is not like the person responsible for a good or bad economy. It's just you have to debunk people's statements that Trump was amazing for the economy.
Yeah, so as far as infrastructure and money coming from the federal government, you have to take a look at the 10th Amendment and states' rights. And for Wyoming, for instance, half our land is federally owned. And right now we're going through a Bureau of Land Management, land swap, and other things within the counties here in Wyoming. You've also got nuclear plants that are planned to be built in Kemmer with federal money, and to include private.
I can't find the chart.
Different sources, and we've also got electric vehicle charging money coming to the state. Now, not electric vehicles in Wyoming, but we do have a lot of tourism here, which is our second most revenue. So there are some things that federal money will help. The issue is some of those federal bills that are coming out also contain things about illegal immigrants and other items that are passed in there and snuck in as they pigeonhole different things for special interests. And that's something we have to watch. The more money we print isn't necessarily people having more money. We see that from inflation rate right now. And because of that federal money that's coming in the subsidies, right now our farmers are paying double the fuel price to send their products out to market. A cousin of mine had to send his cows down to Nebraska for lack of hay here in Wyoming. The cost is just incredible for them to feed the nation, and that goes for our ranchers too, and our capability to sell meat throughout the United States and not get it from Venezuela, Australia, other places. So we've got to watch states' rights.
Thank you, Colonel. Ms. Hageman.
Yes, the infrastructure bill is part of the reason that we're seeing the inflationary pressures that we are right now. The federal government just simply printed a lot of money and started distributing it around. But the other thing is that it's a complete misnomer to even describe it as an infrastructure bill, because the vast majority of the money went for things that didn't have anything to do with infrastructure. We have some real infrastructure needs here in the state of Wyoming, including for our rural water systems. Yet the money that they would be able to receive from this, quote, infrastructure bill is infinitesimal in relation to what they actually need to take care of and maintain.
This person, the infrastructure bill was just normal old good old fashioned investment in infrastructure. It was awesome. Well, I don't know how anyone could stand against just like investing and making our pretty broken infrastructure a little fixed.
The water infrastructure that we need here in Wyoming. This is the example of what I talk about when I talk about the uniparty and the destruction of what Washington, D.C. does. They name something such as an infrastructure bill, and then they put all kinds of goodies in there that have to do with the Green New Deal. A lot of the infrastructure will go to, the money will actually go to things that are very destructive of our fossil fuel industries right here in Wyoming. So in the long run, while the questions seem to presuppose that the infrastructure bill would be beneficial to Wyoming, in reality it's going to cost us, because it is going to go to states and it is going to go to entities and it's going to go to organizations that are absolutely hell-bent on destroying.
All right, let's look. She's making a lot of claims. Let's look at the truth here. Here's the breakdown of the infrastructure bill. $110 billion went towards roads, bridges, and major projects. Whoa. $39 billion public transportation. $66 billion passenger and freight rail. $25 billion airports. $16 billion ports and waterways. $62 billion water. Expand access to clean drinking water. $73 billion clean energy and power. $15 billion electric vehicles. So we get all the way down here to just a little $15 billion is the Green New Deal stuff. But not even. Just some of it was for electric vehicles. Broadband, super important. $45 billion make infrastructure resilient against climate change, cyber attacks, and hazardous weather conditions. Why you wouldn't want to do that, I don't know. And then we get down to a little bit more environmental spending, and then more investments in transit systems and highways, pedestrian and vehicles and trucks. Okay, but almost all of that is like what you consider hard, old-fashioned infrastructure. Some of it is climate change related. Tiny bit of it. But most of it's like preparing for the effects of climate change so that our infrastructure doesn't crumble under the burden of that.
During our fossil fuel industry. We need our fossil fuel industry a lot more than we need money from Washington, D.C. for things that aren't related to infrastructure.
Thank you, Ms. Hageman. Ms. Blinsky?
This again is another overreach of the federal government, and you know they can give us money as an enticement, but there again there is strings attached to everything that we get from the federal government. Wyoming is pretty self-sufficient if we were allowed to be self-sufficient, and you know, by the way, this is not Putin's fault, and it's certainly not the oil and gas company's fault. This is our current administration and the.
Would you like to explain how and why?
The powers that be that are in power at this moment. But we do have, you know, if we said no, you know, some of the stuff we should be able to say no and not have to be beholden to this. I think if a lot more bureaucrats actually said no to some of the stuff, we would be in better shape.
Thank you. Representative Cheney?
Thanks.
Yeah, I think all of my opponents on the stage have made really important points. The infrastructure bill, and it's not just the infrastructure bill, it's much of the other spending, the additional spending that we've seen in the Biden administration is clearly irresponsible, has clearly led to inflation. In fact, it's not just predictable that it would, but we actually predicted that it would. When the Biden administration first came into office, I spent time talking to them and saying to them, aren't you worried if you inject this much money and this much new federal spending into the economy this fast that you're going to get?
And then they didn't get to, I mean, their rescue plan and the infrastructure, but like the Build Back Better was what everyone was screeching was too much federal spending, and that didn't even get passed. And then also, as we've discussed a bunch of times, like, I'm tired of going through this, but I honestly don't even want to right now, but I'm going to so much the energy. Multiple things are affecting inflation. Yes, some of it is the spending we had to do to keep our economy afloat. A good bit, you could even say. But most of that happened under the Trump administration. I'm not blaming them. I think we had to do that. Otherwise, people would have literally not been able to recover from the effect of this economic crash that we had. But that was when the bulk of the money was spent holding up our stock market and holding up our economy broadly. And the packages that were passed under Trump. He passed 2, Biden passed 1. Okay, so some of that's from federal spending. But then also, whenever you have an economic crash like we had, all of your supply chains and production systems get way messed up. And so turning all that back on has caused massive issues, as we've seen with supply chains. That doesn't have anything to do with the governing of any particular person. Of course, they can help to move that process along. But when we do live in a very capitalistic, which y'all know, I'm for regulating capitalism, but I want to keep capitalism as part of our system. But when you do have free markets, they're going to have to work themselves out to some extent. The government only has so much power over these supply chains. So that's causing massive issues because production isn't ramping up enough. So that causes supply to go down. And obviously, that's going to jack up prices. And then on top of that, corporate price gouging, when you compare the rates of inflation to the rates of like the rates of inflation before this to how much they actually raise their prices, it's way more. So they're raising their prices higher than they have to level out and make an comparable amount pre-inflation. So all of that added together gives us the crazy level of inflation. If we didn't have these other two factors, just the federal spending, which was completely justified when our entire economy went down, really the only way that you can keep people afloat in a crisis like that, it wouldn't have been crazy. But because we had this combination of all three and the massive issues that were caused by the pandemic economy crash, then yes, you're going to see crazy inflation. That would not have been different under Trump. I'm sorry to notify you.
Runaway inflation. And the response that we got back was, well, don't worry, it will be, it'll take so long that the inflation won't really be an issue. Well, they were wrong. The inflation is an issue. And it is one example among many of a federal government that is too big and of a turn towards solutions that are not solutions. We know that the best thing we can do to grow our economy is to help the private sector grow jobs, to create policies that let people keep more of what they earn, and to ensure that our community...
Yeah, and another great point, sort of related to Junk Saint's point. If Biden was to blame for high inflation, why is it that there's global inflation? Why is it that in a lot of countries there's higher inflation than even we're seeing? Is Biden to blame for all of that? No, clearly there's a larger effect of the pandemic afflicting all of the world.
Communities themselves are able to have the kind of economic growth and job creation that we know is possible, and that we know is certainly possible, and we ought to be accomplishing here in Wyoming. I think that across the board, when you look at the policies this administration has put in place, whether it's their environmental policies, whether it's their energy policies, whether it's the spending, whether it's the tax policies, they're bad for the country and they're bad for Wyoming. And we've got to be in a position where we can get people to support Republicans and conservatives who are going to put the right policies.
Thank you, Representative Cheney. Senator Bouchard, you have rebuttal time.
And I just want to be clear that people...
Doug, I think 60 concurrent viewers was the highest so far. Obviously, we got to get that to way higher.
Understand.
But it's higher than it was just a little bit ago, so that's good.
Process. Because if you're in the legislature, in the state legislature, you get to hear your representatives from Congress come in and talk. And they never really tell you how bad the things are that they're voting on. In other words, they don't come in and say, hey, this is bad. You guys better be against this, because they don't want to make enemies with the people that are here.
Senator Bouchard, thank you. Colonel Knapp will now have a question from Bob Beck.
Welcome, Colonel. What are 2 or 3 concrete solutions that actually would help fix inflation?
So inflation right now, it was caused by executive orders. And
yes, I love that. That is so dumb. Okay. Caused by executive orders. But I love that they asked that question. I wish every person on the stage would have to answer this. Name 3 concrete solutions to inflation. Name 3 things Trump would have done differently than Biden that would have prevented this.
Passed right now through the House that actually put those out. Right now we've got people that do not have jobs because they choose not to. The jobs are out there in the United States. You'll see advertisements all over, especially in Wyoming. But people are making more money right now by not working.
See you, Riviera. Thanks for being here. Matthew, yeah, that's awesome.
And receiving subsidies from the government. That's something we have to work on. One of the things for inflation is let the states do what makes them money and pays their people. Wyoming, for instance, energy capital. I grew up in Gillette, where 40% of the coal supplies the nation. It's what we're getting from the government right now is restrictive versus innovative. And for instance, the CO2 capture for coal, which means zero emissions, hydrogen production, mining of rare earth minerals, since we get 90% from China right now, which also takes care of our weapon systems and a lot of our electronic products. Wyoming can provide that. And it's on the committees, and Representative Cheney, I know, is serving.
Picture the biggest gasp you could ever imagine with the max level of sass attached to it, and have that replaying in your head every single time these goobers talk.
On many of them where the fight occurs. And that's where we have to make sure that our interests for Wyoming get in there, and those policies, especially the executive order ones that may not be totally legal, they were not passed through the legislation, through our representative officials, and the courts have their own interpretation. So part of that is getting back to three parts of government, ensure we have checks and balances, and they're executed.
Thank you, Colonel. Ms. Hageman.
Well, I think very clearly, obviously, it has to do with energy development. The foundation of what we're dealing with in terms of these inflations is that this administration has absolutely the worst energy policy.
You know what's weird? I just released a video on Ghislaine Maxwell getting sentenced to 20 years, and it wasn't allowed to be monetized because of like certain content that isn't advertiser friendly or whatever. And that's so fascinating that like talking about very relevant world issues, like a massive sex trafficker being sentenced, falls within not advertiser friendly content just because it's relating to a topic that's very dark, you know. I don't know, it's kind of crazy.
That has ever come out of Washington, D.C. And the fact is, we've seen a lot of bad energy policy come out of Washington, D.C. When you've got Jennifer Granholm as the person.
Also, don't forget, anyone who's here who hasn't watched my previous live streams, we do now have Super Chat available. So if you want to support the show and also have your comment read with the maximum level of appreciation and interest, then you can send a Super Chat. I appreciate every single one. Plus, if you want to be like a monthly contributor, you can go to patreon.com/Luke Beasley, patreon.com/Luke Beasley, where I do a weekly bonus show for all of my patrons, and I do like 30 minutes to an hour of extra content for them. But mostly it's just to help support the show. I'm doing some life restructuring elements right now in a couple areas, and so having a little bit of that support from you guys to give a little bit of independence and the ability to keep growing the show and all that type of stuff is absolutely necessary and appreciated.
Who is supposed to be addressing these things. You have Buttigieg on transportation. The people that Joe Biden has surrounded himself with know absolutely nothing about, number one, monetary policy, and they know nothing about economics, and they know nothing about how our country really works. It's really rather surprising how completely sheltered they have been and come into the kind of power that they have, and we're all suffering the consequences from it. The fact is, we need to be using our energy resources.
This lady is a good example of someone who is much better at being a crazy right-winger than the other person, the other woman candidate. So she is getting her points across. They're bad points. They don't make any sense, but they're delivered with a level of confidence and style that people can get onto or grab onto. But then the other person just doesn't even know how to be a crazy right-winger.
We need to be developing energy here. Under President Trump, we had a...
Someone said they don't see the Super Chat button. Like, if you're looking at the screen, I don't know if you're on the computer or phone, but on a phone, it'll be like, you slide at the bottom, like where the like button is and stuff, and you kind of scroll to the right, and you'll see like a little dollar sign. Yeah. On a computer somewhere around there, it's a little dollar sign thing.
A 4% surplus in terms of oil production. In 1 year, we went to a 4% deficit. We've had an 8% swing in just 1 year in terms of energy. I come from an agriculture family. I've represented farmers and ranchers and irrigation districts and different folks in the ag industry. And I'm going to tell you something. We can't grow food at $6 a gallon diesel. We can't do it. We are facing serious food shortages because of what this administration has done.
Explain for me, please, what this administration has done to cause those issues. Yes, we have issues caused from an economic crisis caused by the pandemic, okay? When the entire global economy shuts down because we have a massively globally deadly disease, or very transmissible and then deadly enough to cause a lot of damage, preventing people from going and participating in the economy. participating in the economy for a number of months, then yes, that is going to cause massive economic repercussions over the next few years. Explain to me, though, what Biden has done or not done that has caused that to be worse, please.
Because of the inflation related to energy policy.
Thank you, Ms. Hageman. Ms. Blinsky.
Right now, it looks like the current administration is encouraging the socialist agenda that where their workers are needed, they're unavailable, of course.
Average Joe just asked, can super chats accept 6-digit amounts? I have no clue. I'm sure there's a max, but that's an enticing question there, Average Joe.
And as a small business owner myself, I have a hard time finding anybody to help me. So there should be some incentives to work, and the Bible says if you don't work, you don't eat. So we don't need a dependence on foreign entities. We have everything we need here in our own state of Wyoming. And, for some of these folks that are on the Biden administration to actually believe that they can buy their beef at the grocery store and it doesn't come from a ranch is appalling to me. I can't even tell you. And then also, just the food sources that we see most recently are being destroyed.
Thank you so much, Shia, sending a super chat. Greatly appreciated. He said, great job filling in for David and fun stream today. Thank you so much. You are amazing. Kisses all around, and I had a blast filling in for David. It was awesome.
In the news.
Oh my goodness. And another super chat. Thank you so much, Parrot66, who said, it's funny how they're tearing into the Biden administration, but seem blind to what Trump has done. Totally agree with you. Thank you again for that super chat. And yeah, it's amazing how easily they get away with putting very little effort into crafting clear arguments for why the opposition is worse than they are. And I wish that their own supporters would be engaged enough, intellectually honest enough to require of their politicians that they make clear arguments for the things that they're saying and don't just make a bunch of claims without any supporting evidence.
Here are plants being destroyed.
And by the way, I'm seeing a few new usernames in here today. Don't forget that Monday through Friday now, my new show structure, instead of releasing like pre-recorded videos where I just kind of do it at a random time, instead I'm going live at 5 p.m. Eastern every day, Monday through Friday. If that ever isn't going to happen, I'll do like a YouTube post. I'll make sure you guys know, but you can pretty much depend on 5 p.m. Eastern. You hop on YouTube, I'll be live, and I do the main show starting at 5 p.m. Eastern, where I cover for about an hour, it might be less, 45 minutes, an hour, the news. And so that's like stuff that I prepared, deliver the news, and then afterwards we do the post show, which is like the longer, just kind of relaxing and watching something. So that's the jig.
Part of the country, and you're like, they're attacking our food sources. So yeah, we have need of getting back to business here in Wyoming.
Thank you, Ms. Blinsky. Representative Cheney.
Thank you. I think part of what we have to do and part of what we have to demand is honesty from the administration. And when you look at how long the Biden administration talked about inflation as transitory, how long they told us, well, it's just transitory. We heard the same thing, unfortunately, from the chairman of the Federal Reserve. Well, it's just transitory. And they waited so long that the problem got worse and worse and worse as they injected more and more federal dollars, printed more money, and have created this problem. So I think the combination of the policies, the combination of the spending, the combination of the supply chain issues that we're seeing and that we're hearing about all across the state, all across the country, we have to get back to a recognition and an understanding that the private sector is the engine of growth in our economy, and that means that you've got to unshackle American energy. We need to unleash American energy. We were energy and
we have so much energy production still. I don't know. It's also just messed up. Like, I mean, oil and gas. They pretend like Biden's cut down energy, oil and gas production, but he hasn't really. It's crazy.
Independent. We have the opportunity to be the arsenal of energy for the whole world. And that improves our economy, it improves the world economy, it also improves our national security. And we certainly know that here in Wyoming, that if we're in a position where we're able to develop and to produce the fossil fuels, the energy that we have here, use the technology that we have here, it's the cleanest in the world, we will see economic growth, we will begin to be able to dig ourselves out of this, but it's going to require significant policy changes.
Thank you, Representative Cheney. Senator Bouchard.
Yeah, you know, this conversation is all on the premise that somehow they don't know what they're doing. They know darn well what they're doing. I'll say it's not Biden pulling the strings, because he has to be let off of stage, and I don't think he worked very well without a teleprompter. He can't put a sentence together half the time. So, but somebody knows. Somebody knows exactly what they're doing. This is a plan.
I'm trying to find a crude oil production graph from recently. A lot of these are older, but I'm going to find it for you and then explain the point I was making.
Attack on America. They're not just doing this by accident. I also want to talk about something about the CO2. That's something that we've consistently voted in the Wyoming legislature to advance with federal money. So Mr. Denton said that we don't vote on it here. It gets voted on here. People aren't watching. Republicans here are taking that federal money, and that's why I've said we need to send somebody back there that knows what's going on here. Because if our representatives that go to Congress do not talk to the people here about even how their state legislature is taking money, that in all fairness, Republicans have voted against a lot of this, but nobody comes back here. They just keep telling you that they go back to Washington and they tell you how they do things in Wyoming. Well, that's not really true, because in Wyoming, they're taking the federal dollars and they're spending them, even on CO2 sequestration.
Thank you, Senator.
That's a tough
Colonel
word.
Knapp, you have an opportunity for rebuttal here.
Right, so this is about accountability of elected officials, and then the appointments that occur when that elected official takes office. So you look at the administration right now, Biden administration, and the qualifications of those individuals he's chosen to lead major departments. It's out to the point of being ridiculous. And as a result, our border's wide open. Nobody wants the border open, but it's open.
It's crazy because it's not, though, you know? Like, it's wild whenever you say something and it's not true, you know? That's just like a really crazy fact if it was true, but it's not.
How do you shut it? Well, we've got a president that opened it. Where's the other?
He just opened that door right up. He said, Biden is in the House. Open up the border door, ladies and gentlemen.
Part for the legislative and the judicial to shut that border, which, by the way, we're violating U.S. code.
Thank you, Colonel. Candidates, we are about halfway through tonight's debate, but we're going to continue on. Stephen Dow has the next question for Ms. Hageman.
What is the danger of Wyoming residents losing faith in the election process, and what would you do as our representative to restore faith in that process?
Well, I've talked about election integrity quite extensively as I have traveled around the state. Again, visiting with literally thousands.
The funny thing is election integrity, when they say that, because, you know, to you or I, election integrity is very important. Of course, our elections should be secure, trusted, all that type of stuff. But when they say it, they mean the elections need to be of a characteristical nature that they have so much integrity that Trump will win no matter what. Like, that's what they mean. If Trump loses, we don't have enough election integrity.
Of people, and this is an issue that is at the forefront of their mind. So one of the things that I have done is I have sat down with our Secretary of State, and I've gone through great detail in terms of finding out how our elections are run, who is responsible for what kind of machines we use, what kind of audits are done after the fact. I have educated myself about the election process, and as I've traveled the state, I've also encouraged other people to do the same. I've encouraged our citizens to get involved, to become election judges, to become poll watchers. I think that if they know what's going on in their county, I think that they will have more confidence, in addition to which understanding better what Wyoming law is in terms of our elections. So I think it's a matter of getting involved, and I think it's a matter of knowledge. Knowledge is definitely power in this kind of circumstance. What I think that you see in terms of the election integrity issues are what we've seen more on the national level that has a lot of people concerned, including me. You know, the 2000 Mules movie is something that that I think we have great concern about in terms of the use of the drop boxes. What happened in Pennsylvania?
We went over this on a previous live stream, but the 2,000 mule stuff is so garbage. I got a little bit like, wait, what is this big fuss about it? The claims I was hearing, my hair is getting on my mic. Ew. The fuss I was hearing made it seem like maybe there was actually something there. And then we looked into it on a live stream. I was like, this is the most, like, what's the phrase? I'm doing what the girl did. What am I trying to say? Like, foundationless piece of accusatory information I've ever seen. Like, all of the evidence they used was just putting the same conspiratorial nonsense into a format that seemed more official, which was like this documentary format. Yeah.
The Pennsylvania Supreme Court has concluded that the changes in the absentee voting violated their constitution. Again, going back to the Zuckerberg money, allowing a private individual to capture our county clerks was devastating in our swing states. So election integrity comes back to actually enforcing the laws.
Thank you, Ms. Hageman. Ms. Blinsky.
Yes, enforcing the laws, like the laws that tell us exactly how the election's supposed to go. These states certify, then they bring the certification all the way to the electoral certification in Congress. Who was trying to stop that from happening? Was it the Democrats or was it the Republicans? Who was trying to stop the lawful process? I know, yeah, it's the most debunked documentary ever.
In regards to voter integrity, we do need to remove those ballot boxes.
I know,
no, wait, I didn't mean to do that.
Watching
again, going back to this,
there's a need for integrity.
There you go. She said voter integrity instead of election integrity, and it just made me think that way too many of our voters don't have integrity. Maybe that's the problem.
We do need to remove those.
Just kidding. I love all people. I love all people.
Ballot boxes. We have them even in this town. We need to get rid of them. There's one vote, one ID, and that's the way we should conduct ourselves. If there's a need...
Wait, we're just getting rid of all drop boxes? Interesting. Let's get rid of a way that has been seen time and time again to increase people's access to their right to vote while not increasing to any significant degree fraud in the election. Why we would remove that, I don't know. Now, if we saw that, like, because of ballot boxes, all of a sudden fraud just spiked, or even there was any amount of fraud that could affect an election, then yeah, of course, get rid of them. But that's not what we see. All it does is increase people's convenience and access to their right to vote. Matthew said, I don't love all people. I love all dogs, though. No, you don't believe that either. Like, some dogs are the devil. The ones that attack you, sheesh. But most dogs are awesome.
Need for a absentee ballot, then that needs to be addressed in the beginning. Like if there's military, of course, they always need to have a special circumstance. But there should be no reason for us to have this type of fraud in our elections. I understand when I talked to Mike Lindell, he did say that there was a small portion of voter fraud in this state, but that is alarming anyway.
Oh, it's too good. To back up my opinion, I'm going to cite Mike Lindell. Good stuff. It's funny. I think the rise of people like Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene makes the average right-wing person believe I could be in Congress because they come off as so unqualified, which is true. But then you realize clearly they have some skill, because when I watch Marjorie Taylor Greene, as enraging as it is, it doesn't make me think that she doesn't know how to get her mouth to create words, And so now all these people running for Congress who just have zero ability to communicate in the way that is necessary to be in Congress, or not necessary, but should be necessary. Let me just pick up that name you dropped. Oh, right. Mike Lindell. You know, when I was talking to Mike Lindell, why did I do that voice? What the heck? That is completely unrelated to any of the characters in the current video we're watching.
When you think about, just watching all the poll workers that were in the
Getting hair
2020
everywhere.
election
It's
and what
itching
they
me.
went through, that should never happen. We need to have our judges there, the people who are watching on both sides, to keep each other accountable, and there should be no reason for this. There was a definite setup for the whole 2020 election and anything beyond that. So we need to make sure we have people involved that have integrity, that want to make sure that vote counts, because all of our votes count. So, and I tell people, get involved too. Don't just sit around and talk about it. Let's get something going here. Make sure that you're accountable as well.
Absolutely. Don't just talk about overthrowing democracy. Be about it. Don't just talk about it. Be about it. Someone said, keep in mind this is also Wyoming, but no, like I've interacted with people from Wyoming, and let me tell you, the average person that I would bump into on a Wyoming stroll would be better at communicating their political views than this person.
Linsky, Representative Cheney.
Yeah, I think that election integrity is critical. I believe in voter ID laws. I think that
Can you all answer for me? You know how the word integrity, what is the way to say that word in this context? Ready? We need to make our elections more integral. Integratized. Like, what's the form of that word? Is there one? Is there like a verb version? Anyways, the reason I'm asking is when people ask that question, you should be like, yeah, that's why I'm so happy that our current elections are so integratized. That's why our current elections are so full of integral. Really? Integral makes me think of like integral. No, it is. Wait. Is that? No, because integral is also a noun. All right, I think, yeah, let me see. No, it's an adjective. Wait, what? Oh, there is a noun version of it. Integral. An integral. But that's like a necessary. That's a, like if I say it's an integral part of life to eat or whatever. Integration. I don't know. Intergalation. I agree with that one.
in Wyoming we have tremendously secure elections. I also know that the truth matters. And the claims that Mrs. Hageman is making about the 2020 election are the same claims for which the president's lead lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, was disbarred. They are the same claims for which Sidney Powell has had her law license suspended. They are simply not true. It is not true that there was sufficient fraud.
Oh, but the point is when people say we need election integrity, like, I agree. That's why I'm so happy with how much integrity was in our last election. That's why I'm so happy that we're doing such a great job based on all analysis. Not integration. Someone said integration is a verb. That's like integrating. That's not integrity. Y'all are tripping. Get out of here.
Fraud to change the results of the 2020 election.
Integrated. No. Wait. Yes, I've taken calculus. That has nothing to do with the different forms of the word integrity. This is whack.
President's own Attorney General has said that. The President's own Deputy Attorney General has said that, and I mean President Trump. President Trump's campaign manager said that. President Trump's White House counsel said that. President Trump's own family said that. There was not sufficient fraud to overturn the results of the 2020 election. And we have to either decide that we are going to abide by the rulings of the courts. President Trump and his associates brought 61 lawsuits, state and federal.
I will say to this point right here, when I start to put definition to something, whoa, my computer just spazzed. And the noun has the root part of the word in it. That makes me so mad. Like, sorry, the definition has the word in it. Like, if I go search, what is integration? And the response is the action or process of integrating. Well, no poop, Sherlock. You know? I've looked up a bunch of words recently, and it'll be like, what's the definition of fighting? The act or process of, or wait, no. The, conduct of a fight or something like that. And you're like, well, yeah, well, obviously, but like what? Y'all know what I mean? Integris? Let's see if that's one. Oh. Having or characterized by integrity. Oh, you actually found it. Zeking. Indigenous. No, okay. Integris. We found it. Having or characterized by integrity. Again, why the heck does that have to be the word? But that's perfect. We need to make our elections continue to be integris. Am I pronouncing that right? That's awesome. We found the actual word. Most of y'all were no help.
In a number of those lawsuits, the evidence was heard. They were not simply dismissed based on standing. The president lost every one. On December 14th, when the Electoral College meets and votes, that is the end. Now, if Mrs. Hageman is standing up here claiming that the election was stolen or that there was fraud that was sufficient to overturn the election, she ought to say it. Otherwise, she needs to stop making claims that are not true, and she ought to tell the people of Wyoming the truth.
Yes.
Thank you, Representative Cheney. Mr. Bouchard.
You know, I think the people do have a right to have a concern. What I just heard was there wasn't enough. So that almost sounds like there was some. Interesting. So that is the problem here.
Hey, have you ever considered that you're dumb?
That there is fraud happening, and we know it. That's where we're going to have to fix it. Now, I will say, I want to tell the voters of Wyoming that I'm one of the few people that show up in the county. Actually, there's two of us that show up to canvassing, and we ask questions, like, because they catch it.
Okay, yes, in every election, there's going to be fraud, because there's going to be one person, at least, who goes and does something stupid. If you don't understand the difference between that, which is like a normal thing in every single election ever, and enough fraud that would have to be coordinated on a level to make a difference in an election, then you literally should go search your house because your brain fell out somewhere. Yeah, it's crazy.
Two people that vote or three people or, whatever number they catch. People need to go be part of canvassing. They need to be part of election judging, and they need to be involved. But I will tell you, Wyoming is on a good track. We have a gold standard here on a lot of things we do. When I mentioned earlier that Georgia didn't get voters out of the system that have been there for 20 years, that has to do a lot with federal laws that have been placed on the books, and we don't follow some of that federal law, and that's why we don't do that here, and we purge the list. And that's what keeps our list clean. So that said, people need to know that we're on the right track here in Wyoming. But I will tell you, there's a race coming up, and they need to be concerned on that race. And I'm going to tell you, I'm supporting Chuck Gray.
Thank you, Senator Bouchard. Colonel Knapp.
Yeah, so in the movie A Few Good Men, was you can't handle the truth. Well, America's demanding it. And this non-transparent...
So cringy. No, we can handle the truth. I handled it. I went. I figured out that, guess what? The election was secure. Guess what? Biden won. I handled it. It was awesome. Actually, it was a positive experience.
Of what's going on.
Wyoming.
The system needs fixed. And until we do that, all faith and confidence is lost. The prosecution for violations, for those that vote once, twice, 3, 4 times.
Death.
For those that are voting under a dead person's name. What's happening in all that fraud? Are states following their own laws for elections? And are audits being done correctly in essence with the state legislation?
Oh, thank you. Integris. Integris.
And what they pass for their codes. We got to follow the rules. A lot of countries can accomplish election in one day. They know who won. And as probably the most technologically developed nation in the world, we can't do that. Everything from hanging chads to voting machines that are suspected fraud.
It's your party who wants to make it harder, because you're like, let's take it back to paper only, and everyone has to line up in one voting booth on the day of the election. You would, if we had technology that can make the election happen all in one day because it was more digitized, which I don't even know if I want that, because that could be hacked if it was like connected to the internet. I think our current style is perfect, almost. So I'm fine, but you're the one saying we need to change something, and you want to go the opposite direction and make our elections go slower.
The American people don't trust our system right now. That's got to be fixed. Youth. I talked to somebody driving through Taco John's drive-thru to get my food, and I said, hey, are you going to vote this year? Are you 18? He goes, yeah, I'm 18. I said, are you going to vote? He goes, I don't know. I said, well, you should. That's one of our privileges as citizens to do that. Well, how do you do it? So starting with our youth right now in education, teaching them the process.
I know that youth is a normal word, and I know that people use that in perfect context, but when I hear someone say, like, the youth of America, I don't know. It just feels as if they don't have an understanding of young people, Even though youth, that's a fine word. It just, like, conveys to me this sense of that group of the youth. I don't know. There's no point to what I'm saying, but it's just always a vibe I get. Like, a funny person in a movie being like, we got to reach out to the youth.
That their vote
the youths of America
does count, and they need to vote. And getting that process done through our high schools and even younger has to take place.
Thank you, Colonel. Ms. Hageman, you have a chance for rebuttal time.
You bet. Thank you. One of the things that you'll notice Representative Cheney never ever addresses is the $500 million that Zuckerberg invested in capturing county clerks in the swing states. Approximately 90 to 95% of that money was used in Democrat counties to get out the Democrat vote. Time magazine believes that it changed the outcome of the election. And I don't have a reason to disbelieve that in light of the information I've seen. She also ignores the...
Wait. Are you making a claim that he, like, illegally bought off the election, or as a billionaire he invested a lot of money in trying to get voters out to vote, like every single wealthy interest does, is try to get out the vote for a certain candidate? Oh no, I dropped my little thing. I don't know what claim she's making, because yes, lots of people spend lots of money to run ads and try to get people out to vote and all that type of stuff. The word youth turns off the oots. What?
The decisions that have been issued in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Hageman. Candidates, now we're going to change the format just a little bit. We're going to go to what we call a lightning round. Our panelists will suggest to you one word or short phrased questions, and you'll have 20 seconds to respond. There'll be no rebuttal time during this lightning round. It'll go quick, so be on your toes. The first for Mr. Peck, for Ms. Belinsky.
Wind River Indian Reservation.
Arapaho Indians.
Okay.
And just, do you Okay, I did get a hold of them. So, and I had some people actually.
Wait, what's happening right now? I'm confused. Let me hear this explanation.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Hagman. Candidates, now we're going to change the format just a little bit. We're going to go to what we call a lightning round.
Okay.
Our panelists will ask, or will suggest to you one word or short phrased questions, and you'll have 20 seconds to respond. There'll be no rebuttal time during this lightning round. It'll go quick, so be on your toes. The first for Mr. Peck, for Ms. Belinsky.
Wind River Indian Reservation.
Arapaho Indians.
That's not a question. What I would have hated if they did that to me. You're just saying like word association? Just which group of Native Americans are on that reservation? That's so random. Not that it's not important that a representative knows that, of course. I'm saying the way he didn't frame that in a question form was weird.
Okay.
And just okay, I did get a hold of them. So, and I had some people actually track me down to actually be able to talk with their tribal leaders.
Trademark said, "What are we watching?" This is the Wyoming congressional debate with Liz Cheney in it, where she's been criticized for being aight with democracy, and they are very much not aight with democracy. So,
thank you, Ms. Belinsky. Representative Cheney.
You know, we have an obligation to the tribes on the reservation. We have treaty obligations.
Wait. Now knowing what... Okay, wait. Hold up, everybody. So, were you supposed to say what you were going to do in relation to that issue?
Word or short phrased
sorry, guys,
questions,
we're going back.
and you'll have 20 seconds to respond. There'll be no rebuttal time.
Because now the... whatever, I can't remember her name. Her response is so funny. Seeing how Liz Cheney responded.
During this lightning round, it'll go quick, so be on your toes. The first for Mr. Peck, for Ms. Belinsky.
Wind River Indian Reservation.
Arapaho Indians.
Okay.
And just okay, I did get a hold of them. So, and I had some people actually track me down to actually be.
What is happening? Wait. Oh, it hurts. I love it. Okay, so it hurts so good, as they say. He was saying, tell me what you're going to do about this particular issue in Wyoming, which is the dealing with the management of this reservation. And she goes, I know the name of the tribe, and then just stands there. Oh, that's hilarious.
Be able to talk with their tribal leaders.
Thank you, Ms. Belinsky. Representative Cheney.
You know, we have an obligation.
And her response was not to say what she's going to do, just that she had talked to them. Yeah, I've talked with them. Good for you.
To the tribes on the reservation, we have treaty obligations that we've got to ensure that we fulfill as an.
And then she's like, oh man, Liz is doing a lot better than I did. That's a good point.
We've got to make sure that we are representing their interests. I'm incredibly honored to represent both the Arapaho and the Shoshone tribe and the leaders of those tribes, and make sure that we can do everything we can so that there's opportunity for economic growth and that we respect the traditions and the culture on the
Thank you, Representative Cheney. Senator Bouchard.
I'm just going to use one word. Americans.
Thank you. Colonel Knapp.
The second largest reservation in the United States.
I'm out. What? I don't know about that, sir. Let's watch that mic drop moment one more time. I got one word for you.
Those tribes, and make sure that we can do everything we can so that there's opportunity for economic growth and that we respect the traditions and the culture on the
Thank you, Representative Cheney. Senator Bouchard.
I'm just going to use one word. Americans.
That's the man I want. Yeah, but what are you going to do with the incredibly complex situation you have where the people that you're saying all you have, you know, in that response is Americans. Yeah, but what are we going to do to help them thrive, to help them have their traditions respected, and to recognize the long history we have of oppressing Native Americans, slaughtering Native Americans? Just saying Americans doesn't answer any of the inquiries I have for you, sir.
Thank you. Colonel Knapp?
The second largest reservation in the United States, Shoshone-Arapaho. And right now, with their representation, what we need to take a look at is loss of, the transfer of some of the younger women, indigenous that are there. They are Americans.
Yeah, no one, as Jared said, nobody knows what he means, but that word will cure all. Exactly. And it's like, it's similar to the way they use patriot. It just kind of is whatever they want. It just means you're a far right these days. Like, the meaning of patriot, let's see what it actually means besides just I'm a conservative who screams it all the time. A person who vigorously supports the country and is prepared to defend against enemies or detractors. Now, you take that literally. Think about this. What would be more defensive? Sorry, what would be more, we'll get to defensive in a second, supportive than wanting to get progressives in power who are going to make the country better, a more livable situation for people where they can have dignity and all those things, and not be the one country that in the developed world that doesn't have universal health care. Like, that to me is supporting our country, and then defend it. The same thing. Right now, a lot of the enemies of the essence of our country are unfortunately within our country because they want to say bye-bye to United States democracy. But I think right here it says synonyms, lover of one's country. I think sitting and saying, I don't want to change anything, or I want to go back to the old days, is the antithesis of loving your country. Loving your country, to me, is wanting to make it better, wanting to improve the lives of as many people in it as possible.
There are first Americans, and we ought to honor them as such. We started with 11 tribes. We're down to 2 right now at the reservation.
Ms. Hageman?
We need to ensure that we've got all the education opportunities that they should have. Safety and security. One of the things that we're seeing with the drugs flooding across our southern border is it's affecting our indigenous people as much as anybody else, and we read about it every day in the newspaper. Also addressing the missing women and girls.
I wonder which newspaper she reads. I can't imagine she's opening up the New York Times. By newspaper, she probably means like newsmax.com or something.
Girls is something that we should all be terribly concerned about and make sure that we're addressing that.
Thank you very much. Bob Beck throws out the next topic for Representative Cheney.
School safety.
School safety is hugely important. I'm a mother of 5 children.
Yeah, right. Nationalist is a lot different than patriot. And Republicans kind of conflate those two words, like a nationalist. I'm curious what the technical definition of nationalist is. A person who strongly identifies with their own nation and vigorously supports its interests. See, that's not, especially to the exclusion or detriment of the interests of other nations. Like, I think if you're an American politician, it's perfectly fine to put America first in a literal sense, but the way they manipulate it is like that means we can't, being a nationalist also means we can't like have good mutually beneficial relationships with other countries, and we also put a heavy emphasis on real Americans who are a very specific brand of Americans. I don't know. The literal definitions of words often don't encapsulate what they mean now these days.
When I see, as mothers across the country have seen what happened in places like...
Shut up, Jared. I wasn't doing that. I was just looking at how big my stack has gotten. We waste a lot of paper with written newspapers. I'm happy nobody really does that anymore except for me. Because there's like a massive stack of newspapers now. I don't know what to do with it.
Uvalde, our children need to be able to go to school, and we need to know that they're going to be safe when they go to school, and that's something we need to invest in.
Senator Bouchard.
You know, this is an issue I've talked a lot about. You know, we see one state that has taken the lead in this area, and that's Utah. Utah follows federal law, and they allow all citizens to carry in their schools that have a concealed carry permit. We don't see the problems in Utah, but we see them in these places that have strong gun-free zone policies.
Thank you, Senator Bouchard. Colonel Knapp.
Being an infantryman for 30 years, the first thing you do is security, and we've got to get serious about that. We can't do it tomorrow because the shooting will happen today.
What newspapers do I get daily? I only get one. I can't possibly read more than, I can't even read all the articles in the one story just based on time in one newspaper, but like per day. But New York Times is the one that I get. I just glanced at the time. I'm going to have to go, you guys, so we won't be able to get through all this, but I appreciate each one of you for being here. It was a blast as always. Obviously my show is Monday through Friday. I might, if I have extra time, stream on the weekend. I don't know. But if not, I will see you all in the Patreon bonus show. So go to patreon.com/Luke Beasley to become a patron, support the show, or next Monday, or, you know, this upcoming Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Much love to you all. Glad you liked it, Trademark. Thank you.